in Kenya, county governments to set aside land for planting indigenous trees, stoppage of funds to Isiolo County due to failure by the governor to honor Senate summons. Then 11, the projected business for Thursday, the 18th of July, 2024, will be business not concluded in the order paper for Tuesday, Wednesday, and any other business scheduled by the SBC. Mr. Speaker, in concluding, it's good just to mention that as at the rise of the House yesterday, there is only one senator who is yet to speak to the motion that I had mentioned earlier on the state of the nation. And that was by design, Mr. Speaker, because as a leadership, we had agreed that once all the members have spoken, our members of staff have been taking into consideration the various ideas and proposals that have been brought forward as ways of moving the country forward and healing the nation and bridging the divide by all the senators that have spoken to this motion, Mr. Speaker, and ensuring, Mr. Speaker, that eventually we have concrete ideas. It is our intention, Mr. Speaker, that we are going to invite various institutions and constitutional commissions, Mr. Speaker, to come and engage this House based on the proposals that have come from the various members of this House, Mr. Speaker. However, I don't intend to dwell much into it because we are yet to retreat as a leadership of the House, where we will come up with far-reaching recommendations by Tuesday next week, Mr. Speaker. Then at that point, we will allow the gentleman that is yet to speak, the Senator for Laikipia, to move the motion in the amended form, and we rise and vote on it, then move forward with the proposals that have been made. I thank honorable senators for abiding by the request that we made at that particular time to allow each senator the opportunity to speak to this motion. I appreciate. I thank you, Mr. Speaker, and hereby lay the statement on the table of the Senate. Thank you.
Senator Boni, you know you cannot rise on a point of order. Proceed.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. I thank the leader of the majority for the communication. Whereas I have the latitude to seek clarification from him through other means, but because he's made what concerns me in public is fair that I seek that clarification. He has said, Mr. Speaker, that the Kara bill has not been assented to and that we will have to redo it. Mr. Speaker, could you confirm whether the President has sent such a memorandum? And if he has not, in our understanding, what would necessitate Kara to be returned if Dora has been assented to? Because Kara flows from Dora. So if Dora is an act, how then can Kara be invalidated, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker, I say this because we are very conscious of the fact that our counties are constrained, and the money that we were able to give the counties in the Dora bill, many of the delegations believe it should remain there, Mr. Speaker. Could you clarify?
Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I am not sure whether the whip listened properly. I said I'm not certain whether division of revenue bill, as was passed by this House, has been assented to. I have no recollection. Unless he has that information, that is something that he may wish to clarify to me. And I said Kara is a product, like he has rightfully put, of division of revenue. And if division of revenue is yet to be assented to because of reasons that he very well knows, then it follows that we will have to make fresh considerations of all those matters. Therefore, I am not sure which division of revenue that he's referring to that has been assented to. And if it has been, then, Mr. Speaker, I will await further communication from how I normally get it. And he has access to that information. I don't know why he chooses to use the floor to seek it, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Sifuna.
Chair, I personally find no fault in the manner in which Senator Khalwale has chosen to address this matter, because it is not a matter that is just between him and the Leader of Majority. If I understand well, Honourable Speaker, there is a way in which the executive communicates with this House on their treatment of any bills that have been passed by this House. So the authority to tell us with certainty whether the bills that we've passed here have been assented to or have been brought back with memoranda from the President should be the Chair, the Speaker of the House. So that clarification should come to all of us via communication from your Chair, if in fact the Executive has treated those two bills in the manner in which we are hearing them. Because this is just now a conversation in the House, but an official communication should come through you on how the Executive has dealt with those two bills. I thank you, Honourable Chair.
So let's await the formal communication. Before we proceed to the next order, Senator Boni, the matter will be communicated formally and officially. Let us not extend it beyond that. Proceed.
Mr. Speaker, we all stood there and we swore to uphold and defend the Constitution and therefore the rule of law. Mr. Speaker, I don't have to remind any colleague here. It is clear how a bill becomes law. So if after 14 days, no communication came from you that the DORA bill had not been ascended to, automatically it stands ascended to. And this is why I need this clarification, Mr. Speaker.
So, Senator Boni, I think I've indicated that a formal communication in that regard shall be made. Before we proceed to the next order, allow me to make this communication. Senator Mugeni and Senator Kavindu, kindly take your seats. Now, honourable senators, I would like to acknowledge the presence in the Speaker's Gallery this afternoon, 12 Hansard officers from the county assemblies of Kisumu and West Pokot. The officers are undertaking a capacity building program on information technology in the production of parliamentary Hansard at the Center for Parliamentary Studies. Honourable senators, on behalf of the Senate and my own behalf, I extend a warm welcome and wish them a fruitful visit. I thought I saw the senator for Kisumu in the House. In his absence, I will allow the senator for Migori to extend a word of welcome.
Mr. Speaker, as you can hear from the background complaints from the senator of Homa Bay that Migori is far from Kisumu, which means that he would have desired to, welcome the amazing delegation from Kisumu. It's only that even though Homa Bay is far from Kisumu, is closer to Kisumu, it seems that Homa Bay is very far from Parliament. The senator from Homa Bay was a bit late, but that is that is fine. We are very happy that you are here with us. This is the upper house by virtue and valor of Parliament, and you've seen as much as possible how this house has risen to the occasion of the challenges that we are facing as a nation, to the extent that some sovereignty is coming back to our country as a function of this house. There's a lot to learn from this house. I want to wish you well in your stay here. And in the normal tradition of this house, when you come like this, there is a formal welcome, and then there is an informal welcome, in which I'll invite the senator of Kisumu, as well as the senator of Homa Bay. And because Kericho is also very close to Kisumu, I'll invite the senator for Kericho to do a better, informal welcome, where the great senator of Homa Bay will show the best of his generosity. I thank you and welcome you. Thank you so much.
Next order.
Order number 8, motion, the current state of the nation.
We are deferring that particular motion. Yes, Senator Sifuna.
Honorable Chair, there was one senator who had not spoken, if I had the majority leader. I don't know what is the plan for that one senator who has not spoken.
Now, Senator Mngatana, you know you cannot stand on a point of order. You want to inform the chair? Just proceed with the clarification. You may proceed, Senator Mngatana.
Mr. Speaker, I cannot inform the chair because it is full of wisdom. However, Mr. Speaker, I wanted to correct the point that only one senator had not spoken. Mr. Speaker, I was away on Pan-African Parliament duty where we were able to represent our nation, and Professor Kamar also was with me together with the others. So, Mr. Speaker, if it would please you, we would want to say one or two things in very short time, myself and Professor Kamar, Mr. Speaker.
Very well. In that regard, therefore, I will allow the three honorable senators to make the intervention on this motion. Thereafter, the motion will stand deferred.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I watched with a lot of pride at the way the House was conducting this motion. A few days ago, when we were representing our country in the Pan-African Parliament, Mr. Speaker, a lot of people were worried that something will go wrong in the country, but we were at pains to explain to the continent of Africa and the members of Parliament, 5 from each country, that our country will be able to overcome the challenge. And Mr. Speaker, at the end of it, the democratic credentials of Kenya across Africa has risen high because of these very actions that took place while we are away. Mr. Speaker, my contribution is only one, and I didn't want to repeat what a lot of honorable members have spoken on to. But Mr. Speaker, many, many years ago, at the birth of this nation, it was very painful. People lost lives. The country was unstable. But it was at that time that people were fighting for the first liberation of this country so that the Kenyan people will be free. And that was the first generation of liberation for our country. Mr. Speaker, many years later, our people also sacrificed a lot to fight for the first generation rights. And Mr. Speaker, these were things like expanding the democratic space, ending detention without trial, expanding the rights, personal rights and freedoms, which at the end of it, Mr. Speaker, culminated in the obtaining of a new constitution. That was the second liberation. So, Mr. Speaker, it was again, this time round, other people, another generation, which was fighting its own liberation, which to me, Mr. Speaker, is the third liberation for this country. And Mr. Speaker, I know some things didn't go very right because a lot of property was destroyed, lives were lost, but we shouldn't lose the fact that there is a point that is being raised by this generation, and which is this point, Mr. Speaker. In the first liberation, people never asked what is happening in the treasury. In the first liberation, Mr. Speaker, the focus was we need independence. In the second liberation, again, people never asked what is happening in the treasury. The question was We want our human rights back. We want our right to associate, our right to freedom of expression. They never ask the question, what is happening in the treasury? In this liberation that was led by our young people, our own children, Mr. Speaker, the question is being asked, what is happening at the treasury? And although many things went wrong, we need not to lose the focus that the question is, what is happening in the treasury? Mr. Speaker, this question, we must really not lose focus on it. Our children are asking, why are we collecting taxes? Why is the Auditor General saying that in the period between 2021 up to now, we have borrowed 1.1 trillion, there are no projects? The question is being asked, where are the roads? The question is being asked, how is this process of making budget that is continuously loading on us and the results we are not seeing? So, Mr. Speaker, in our discussion in this motion, and I will be very brief, I pray that we do not lose focus on the light that has been shown on Treasury. Mr. Speaker, Treasury interacts with the figures of budget for a whole year. As this budget cycle is ending, the new budget cycle starts. Treasury is the one that brings these proposals. Mr. Speaker, I remember very well that the first proposal was that the budget in Kenya had gone to 4.2 trillion. And Mr. Speaker, they were then asked, we cannot raise this money because KRA was projecting 3.4 trillion from ordinary revenues. So they were told, go and cut. They came back with 3.9 trillion. Still, Mr. Speaker, $500 million or 0.5 trillion was still in deficit. And therefore the Finance Act, the finance bill that became controversial was brought to try and bolster those revenues. But Mr. Speaker, looking at the proposed tax cuts, the proposed reduction in government expenditures, it seems, Mr. Speaker, in that treasury, Mr. Speaker, it needs a lot of changes. There's need to be a new thinking in that treasury, Mr. Speaker. The people who are working there, they look at this budget as something they do every day. It's a normal thing. They don't really care, Mr. Speaker, about the issues of the people. And I know the public anger went to our colleagues in the National Assembly. But Mr. Speaker, how long do they interact with those figures? The real issue is with Treasury. Mr. Speaker, they take a whole year preparing those figures. And in that year, Mr. Speaker, they still come up with figures while the demonstrations were on. Business Daily is saying there's 803 million that has been set aside for new cars for the president, the deputy president, the prime cabinet secretary. It is Treasury, Mr. Speaker, that was doing that. And these people, they see it is normal that when a cabinet is appointed, we should bring new seats, new cars, new furniture. It's a normal thing for them. The kind of thinking that is not critical. People, you know, they tell you a renovation of a building that was bought for this amount, almost twice the amount for renovation. Mr. Speaker, there's a problem in that treasury. And they have convinced the people of Kenya that it is not their problem, it is the problem of the National Assembly who are supposed to pass those figures. And yet those figures, they interact with them for a very short while. Mr. Speaker, there is a problem in that treasury. And if this revolution or these demonstrations or these questions that are being asked are not focused on changes in that treasury, Mr. Speaker, the youth will not have had their answers. Mr. Speaker, that treasury, there are people who have stayed there all their lives. From the time they were employed, the promotions they got, they have never moved until they are now very senior people. The way they made the budgets in 1980 is the way they want to do the same way they want to do it in 2024. That they will still buy a lot of food for entertainment, flowers, while outside here, they would be, ignoring the issues that go to the core of the people. So, Mr. Speaker, I believe that there is a need to look at that treasury, Mr. Speaker. And if the president is going to listen to what the Senate is saying, one of the things he should pick is that we need to bring fresh thinking into that treasury. We need to sack people in that treasury, particularly the senior people in that treasury. We need to bring people in their 30s, in their 40s, who have probably served in their private sector. People who are coming out to think differently, people who will process these figures that are brought to members of parliament rather late on time. People who will be given that authority to do what needs to be done to this country. Mr. Speaker, we have a central bank, again, that thinks the same way it was thinking years ago. The same stuff, they were there years ago. Young people are not getting opportunities in those areas, Mr. Speaker. Just like Treasury, young people are not there. If you go there, Mr. Speaker, the senior people, all of them are people who have climbed over the years. There's no fresh thinking. There are no new ideas. And I'm telling you, I can guarantee you, Mr. Speaker, that next year they will be buying new cars again. There will be a budget for flowers. There will be a budget for, somebody here was saying, fuel cards of hundreds of thousands. Mr. Speaker, as we look introspectively, I think we need to sweep the house called Treasury. We need to drain that swamp, Mr. Speaker. We need to bring new people into that Treasury, Mr. Speaker. In the finance department, we need new ideas. We need a fresh thinking about that Treasury, Mr. Speaker. When people refuse to change, then change must change them. What the young people have shown us is that they have capacity to ask questions and think outside the box. These are the people that we need in that treasury, Mr. Speaker. People who will stand and tell us, you don't need 20 security people working with you. What are you afraid of? Mr. Speaker, we need to rationalize everything. And this can be done only by somebody who is from outside. Somebody who will look inside that treasury with a clean eye, a fresh eye, a young person who would say, it doesn't make sense to do this and this. It didn't need people to go and riot, Mr. Speaker, for these points to be understood. We need fresh people to go inside there. And Mr. Speaker, I have no doubt, Mr. Speaker, that Professor Njuguna Ndung'u must go. The head of treasury there must go. The head of finance, they must go. The director of budget, they must go. Because these are the people, Mr. Speaker, who interacted with these figures, ridiculous figures. 803 million for cars for 3 offices, Mr. Speaker, for a whole year. And then they bring them to members of parliament to crucify them here. Mr. Speaker, something needs to be done. And that treasury also, Mr. Speaker, as we drain the swamp and the changes that need to be done, we also need to ask the national cohesion to look into that treasury. Mr. Speaker, counties like Tana River County continuously over the years, you will find a budget line of water, there's nothing. A budget line of tarmac roads, there's nothing. 5 years, 6 years. Why? Because we don't have any people in that treasury who are involved in the budget making process. Mr. Speaker, we need, as we drain this swamp, to have a clear indication where are these employees of treasury coming from in terms of where their counties are from. Mr. Speaker, you will come to be shocked that if the National Cohesion Committee here is to give you the figures, many people will be coming from certain areas. And it is those certain areas that are given the bulk of the cake of this country, Mr. Speaker. So we have to answer to these questions that are being raised in Treasury, Mr. Speaker. Treasury is the biggest culprit in this whole thing. Treasury is the one that was going to ban this country because they are bringing wrong figures, putting wrong priorities, and telling us, go and borrow, go and borrow, go and borrow. And telling us there's no other way. And Mr. Speaker, most of the times, members of parliament, when they're interacting with this, they have faith in those people who are advising them. And the experts are the people who are in treasury. But when you look, Mr. Speaker, the kind of advice, when you start studying those figures, Mr. Speaker, we have a very big problem in that treasury. Treasury has been a big letdown. Treasury is the one that has been advising us, even for the division of labor, the division of revenue. They were denying the counties money. Mr. Speaker, Treasury has a problem. And before we resolve this problem, we will never solve the problems of this country. Mr. Speaker, all the senior officials in that treasury, they are as guilty as everybody who doesn't wish this country well. So, Mr. Speaker, I pray one of the recommendations should be to sweep that treasury clean. New people to come in, to look at our processes and to deal with these matters that has been raised by our young people with an open mind, Mr. Speaker. People to be told the truth that we can't make budgets like 1980s. You still come to make the same budget in 2020s, Mr. Speaker. Things have to change, and I think this liberation must be domiciled in that treasury. All the questions that are being asked are to do with money. And Treasury, Mr. Speaker, is very guilty. They have kept quiet. They are not saying anything. Treasury is very guilty. They are the ones who know where our debts are. They are the ones who have held all those secrets. Treasury, Mr. Speaker, must be cleaned. Treasury must be cleaned, Mr. Speaker. And even if we do all these changes, we change ministers, we change whoever, we appoint committees, multi-sectoral, what if Treasury is not changed, Mr. Speaker? They will still come back with the same advice to the president next year, and this problem will not go away. So I laud the young people for fixing their eye and focusing on the questions of money to define the third liberation. My appeal is that they shouldn't go to the extent of being blamed again because of destruction of property and killing, and the killings that come with the resistance and everything. What should happen is let them focus the questions they have risen about Treasury, Mr. Speaker. Treasury. The changes must, from central bank, I know they have security of tenure, but we make these laws, we can make them again. The governor, his deputy, the deputy directors, all the central bank, it needs to be drained. The CS Treasury, the deputies, and everybody, they all need to go, Mr. Speaker. We need new people who are dealing with things with new eyes. If we don't fix the Treasury, Mr. Speaker, this third liberation will have failed. And we will have let down our people, our young people who are in our houses, because all of them are asking the same question. Treasury. What can we do to clean this treasury? And Mr. Speaker, we need a fresh start. And I would be one of those people who would be so happy to see changes happening in that treasury, Mr. Speaker. You can't have people staying in the same ministry 20 years. What do we expect? They will bring us the same budget they were doing in 1990. The same thinking they were having in 1980 is the same thing they will come to tell us, and they will come there with figures, and you don't know. You cannot look at a 40-page document within 1 week and make very good suggestions. You'll be told, oh, that road of yours is there, that bridge is there, so support this document. And that's what people do. Unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, they take the blame, while Treasury, Mr. Speaker, are the ones who know what is happening. Mr. Speaker, we need to focus and I hope the people will make suggestions, and this Senate, as we summarize what we are presenting as our thinking, the question of Treasury, Mr. Speaker, will be central, because these are the people who have been letting us down, Mr. Speaker. Treasury, we need to drain the swamp at the Treasury. This is the whole issue about the demonstrations, about the questions our young people are asking. Mr. Speaker, I support that motion. Thank you.
Senator Professor Kamar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to add my voice to this motion, and to thank you and the leader of majority and leader of minority for allowing time for us to ventilate on what is going on in our country. Mr. Speaker, I was in South Africa with the Senator Mungatana, but we were not able to rest without watching you in this Senate. So we kept going back to the records in the evening to make sure that we are with you. And I want to thank senators, because I felt extremely proud to be a senator in this time because of the contributions from these members of the Senate. I really felt happy that at least we are holding the bull by the horns, as they call it, and this Senate has made all of us proud by the contributions that they have made. Mr. Speaker, I will not therefore repeat some of the things that have been done. I will just capture a few areas. I'm a member of the Education Committee, and I will touch something on the education, the issues that were highlighted by our youth. But before I say that, Mr. Speaker, I want to condole with the families that lost their loved ones in this demonstration, and pray that God gives them peace and comfort at this very difficult time. Our youth, Mr. Speaker, questioned our taxation vis-a-vis our application of the taxes that we have. And they actually made us think. As I listened to the senators, I said, it looks like it had to take the Gen Zs for us to actually think about how we apply our taxation. And I think this was really timely, and it is time that we actually discuss ourselves and question ourselves about even how we spend within Parliament itself. I will touch on the education sector, Mr. Speaker. And in touching with in the education sector, as raised by Gen Zs who have gone to school and have not been employed, the challenges of going through school are still real in this country. In the year 2003, Mr. Speaker, basic education in Kenya was supposed to be free. It was declared by Parliament that it was going to be free. But basic education in Kenya is from primary to secondary, up to the Form 4 level. But has it been free? We need to ask ourselves, has it been free? Because that was one sector that was supposed to have been taken care of by our taxation. And this would have made everybody happy if our tax was used to give everybody this human right called education up to the basic education level. Then people would have gone to look for training and would have moved on. But this has not been the case, and this is why our youth are saying our parents have struggled. They have paid right from primary school, secondary school, after university, and we have no jobs. This time that we re-looked at that, Mr. Speaker, because Kenya has endorsed a lot of agreements, both international and continental, as far as education is concerned. In fact, in the year 2008, free secondary education was pronounced by the then President Kibaki, and we are supposed to have free day secondary education. But today we know that there is a lot of payment that is being done. Are these legal, and can they be stopped? so that actually we can have fairness as far as basic education is concerned. I dare say, Mr. Speaker, that fairness in basic education, since education is a right, would enable everybody to be able to move on with in their lives when they go for skill development. But as long as we have any fees being paid, we cannot call it a human right, because it means it is those who are able who will have their children moving in education. Mr. Speaker, I will never forget your speech when I joined. This kind of discrimination.
Increasing food production by reducing the cost of farm inputs, thereby lowering the cost of food and lowering the cost of living. We have stabilized the economy by preventing what was an imminent debt default. We have stabilized fuel prices, lowered inflation to an all-record low of 4.6%, and we have stabilized the foreign exchange regime. We have implemented radical changes.
Is the fact that there is something called bursary, and we are trying to bring free education through bursary. Our youth are telling us that even that bursary is released in a very discriminative manner, that not everybody who is needy is given that money. In our days, bursary belonged to what we said were the people who were not able, and anybody who was able was not given bursary. But these days, nobody knows who gives the bursary. But more still, especially when it comes to this house, bursary has moved from being a national agenda to the counties. How did the governors decide that they are going to give bursaries? Mr. Speaker, in the Education Committee today, we went through the analysis from the Budget Office on what was budgeted for, on the budget and the expenditure of the year 2022-2023 in the education sector. Shockingly, we have governors who have spent 80% of whatever they have given to the education sector in bursaries. What are they looking for in these bursaries? We asked ourselves, and I'm going to bring a motion to this House so that we ventilate on that. Because if the education sector, whatever education was devolved in the Constitution, which is the early childhood education and vocational technical training sector, if those sectors are not funded because we want to give bursaries to the tune of 80%, or even there was an 85%, one county gave 85% for bursaries, duplicating what is going on in the national government, it then means that we are not even able to take care of the sectors that have been devolved. This House must interest itself in what was devolved. And what was devolved is early childhood and vocational training center. Mr. Speaker, when we were in Turkana, I remember the chairman of CBIC telling us that Turkana, the whole of Turkana was becoming, what zone was it? He actually said that it was, whatever had been promised in the documents that they had been done had never been done. Reason, governors are changing the agendas midstream. You request for money for education, and then you divert the same money from education to whatever other agendas there. It is very important that we interest ourselves in what is devolved, Mr. Speaker. It is therefore very important that even when we talk of bursaries at the county level, we need to ask ourselves, do we have that money? Are we taking care of early childhood? Are we taking care of technical training, vocational training? If not, then let's focus on the things that are ours first. That be it for education, Mr. Speaker. The second area I wanted to touch on education is the one of higher education. 2 weeks before the problem that we had a meeting between the Committee of Education and the Minister and the various sectors, because we wanted to understand this new formula that is being used. The formula itself is good, because there is a return of what we used to call boom those days. There is a return that is coming through help. But how is it going to be applied? Because what our youth are asking, the questions they are asking have to do with how to apply the money. Are we sure that everybody is going to get the same money? And this is what we want to look at, even when it comes to higher education. Because again, when we say education is a right, it must be a right all the way through. The loans are there, the bursaries are there, which are coming through the different sectors. There's what we call the university funding, funds, which are being given to every student. We want to appeal to the Ministry of Education that they must be straight and clear, and they must take care of everybody so that the equality that education brings can actually be realized. The third one, which was raised, was about fair employment. Mr. Speaker, some of us were involved during the promulgation of the new constitution. Not even that, in the Bombers process. The main problem that we had in the Bombers process was the inequity between this country. That there was inequity in development, inequity in resources, and members of parliament at that time, because I was not a member of parliament, but I was in a committee that was discussing development, it came out that members of parliament were even fed up of moving from one ministry to the other. You go and beg for one hospital in one place, and then you go to another ministry to beg for one road, and then you go and beg at the Minister of Water for money to dig a borehole. All those things were supposed to be things of the past with the new constitution. Because it was very clear we are doing two things. We were devolving power and devolving resources. Have we devolved resources to the level that development is equitable in this country? When you hear our youth talk of unfair employment, it means there are people who feel others are more employed than others. And we need to start scrutinizing. We need to be very honest about this, and we need to be answerable when it comes to employment. And again, we need to actually know whether we are prepared, everybody, for these positions. Mr. Speaker, the issue of employment again touches on the unions that we have seen that have been rising up. I know our youth waited on the issue of employment of nurses and employment of doctors. But we need to ask ourselves, Mr. Speaker, these doctors are asking for implementation of agreements that had been negotiated. Our CSS must ask themselves the big question. When the negotiations took place, a CS was involved. There is no way another CS comes in to denounce what a previous CS did. And I say this with all due respect, Mr. Speaker, because I was also a CS. And I had to handle negotiations of higher education that had been done in 1997 when I was a lecturer in the university myself. But you arrive in the ministry and you find that there were agreements that were signed, and you cannot run away from them. So it is so ironical that we are discussing negotiation, and yet there were negotiated agreements that were even signed, whether it is in health or in education or in whichever way. Whatever had been signed has been signed. It's not helpful, Mr. Speaker, to have our medical doctors sleeping outside Afia House as they are doing right now. We don't have doctors in hospitals. We don't have doctors in our medical centers at the county level. So why are we leaving professionals to beg for what is rightfully theirs if that signature was done? Mr. Speaker, it is my belief that whatever savings government is doing, and I'm so appreciative that the president himself has said he is going to cut down, and make savings. Whatever savings they make, the first thing is our health. Because health is another right that we cannot run away from. And it is very important that we have these doctors recruited. We cannot run away from the fact that this was agreed. The only thing we can do is to renegotiate for the future, but not for the current president. I would therefore like to ask our sister CS of Health that there is no need to fight a war that eventually we lose. Because we have fought so many wars, our governors have been fighting with nurses, eventually they pay. It is very important to stick to the law and to stick to the fact that we have agreements that we must do. So as our youth are raising the same, we are not going to wait for the same youth to go to Avia House to make demands that we already know. It is very important that now that we have opened our minds, and they have opened our minds to the fact that the realities are before us, that we deal with those. Mr. Speaker, I really would like to support. I don't want to take more time because a lot of things have been raised by our own colleagues. I would like to end by saying, Mr. Speaker, I support, and I'm very proud of this Senate. Thank you.
Senator Omtata.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I thank you for the opportunity to speak to this very important motion. And as I rise to speak, Mr. Speaker, sir, I first of all send my condolences to the families that lost loved ones. I also look at those who have lost livelihoods, those who have been maimed. And I'll hear this voice, the blood of the innocent, that is crying out for justice on our streets. When in 2011, a group of Kenyans, including myself, peacefully occupied Jogoo House and evicted Professor Ongeri, demanding that he accounts for 4.6 billion shillings that had been given to free primary education, the worst that was done to us is that non-state actors were hired to come and splash human feces that has been made into a sludge. We were covered in human feces. When we did not budge, they sent a contingent of the JSU. After about 3 days, they arrested us. And we were taken to industrial area, and we are alive today. After the president, and by the way, and the courts acquitted us, I should say that. After the president addressed the nation on the 25th of June, claiming criminals had invaded parliament and staff, I took it upon myself to do a hospital crawl. I crawled across hospitals in Nairobi at midnight to try and identify who these criminals were that the president was referring to. At the matter, there were 2 people admitted with rubber bullet wounds, shot at point blank range. At Mbagathi, they had treated more than 40 people for gunshot wounds and discharged them. At the Nairobi hospital, there were 2 people who were admitted. At Kenyatta, I saw 3 bodies, dead people, dead kids, in fact, they were young people. 15 were in ICU with the gunshots to the head. 148 were in the wards with injuries multiple parts of the body, including a young boy who was about 14, 15, gunshot through the shoulder. I looked at these people. None of them was a criminal. And yet the president had gone on national TV and claimed that criminals had come out, and that's why there was justification for the use of that force, and he said that at all costs, force would be used. So, I see the blood of these children, the mayhem, and the amount of violence that was used here not justified at all. People cannot be killed under the Constitution of Kenya 2010 for exercising their rights. The right to life is a right that is protected in our Constitution. It begins at conception, ends at natural death. One thing, during the operations, I've been to very many street demonstrations. The first thing that I noticed was out of character was the command structure of the police. I was able to identify some policemen walking alone, not accompanied. And I began wondering, is there a command structure? That was in the morning. So the question was, how was the police operation planned and conducted? Was there a central command? Who were the field commanders? Who were the sector commanders responsible for each section of the streets? And how have they accounted for the deaths and injuries that happened in areas under their command? How did armed men, for the many times I went on the street to demonstrate, there could be there could be policemen in civilian clothes, but they were never armed. They could participate in an arrest, but I have never seen a person dressed in civilian clothes shooting at the public. I've never seen it. Was this a militia? And to whom does it answer? How did these armed men get to join uniformed police? Do the police standing orders, do the force orders allow for that? How many police officers were issued with live bullets? And have the bullets been accounted for? Why was there so much random shooting? How can you have so many people in hospital with gun wounds for a small demo that took place here? What was the president trying to justify? And can he get away scot-free from claiming there were criminals when he can't produce one criminal who was shot dead on our streets? Why is the internal affairs unit of the police being dismantled since the president came into power? Why has Mr. Koome, to whom the unit answers, transferred almost all competent investigators out of the internal affairs unit? And for those who don't know, the internal affairs unit was set up and is properly equipped to investigate crime by the police. They receive reports from the public, they receive reports from fellow officers. IPOA has got no capacity to investigate policemen. IPOA are civilians. Most of them don't understand the operation orders of the police. There's a special unit that deals with this. Why is it that this unit has been dismantled? Starved of funds, competent officers transferred to outposts, and the unit left as a shell. Some of these officers, Mr. Speaker, sir, were trained at a very high expense by the public outside this country in various jurisdictions, but are now doing clerical work in outstations since the appointment of IG Koome, such that right now as we speak, there is no capacity in the police to investigate what happened on the streets of Nairobi. A capacity that had been built to ensure that if there were any issues, they would be investigated thoroughly by the police who understand how police are supposed to operate. Now, the blood of these children who were killed is crying out for justice. Some were killed in this hallowed house. The young man who was making fun in the National Assembly, Mr. Speaker, sir, why did that young man have to be shot dead? We cannot sit here and discuss these niceties that we are discussing here, complaining and not making a case, yet people have buried children whose only crime was that they went out to say that this country can be managed in a better way. If there's anything that this House can resolve to do and still retain its dignity, is to demand for justice for these kids. We have no other business. Because this country cannot be run the way it's being run. The mayhem that happened across Tomboya Street on the other side of the city, for some of us who walked there and saw, it's unbelievable. Forget what happened here. It was unbelievable. The number of people who were shot and killed on those sides is unbelievable. Why are we still having abductions? We are seeing stories in the media that some young men have been abducted after the event and have disappeared and bodies have been recovered. Why is life so cheap in this country? So all that we are speaking here, unless we demand justice for the kids who are killed, unless we demand justice for the blood which is crying out to be atoned, there's nothing we are doing here. We are just repeating, we are just going back to the same usual thing of lulling the country to sleep, pretending that something is being done when absolutely nothing is being done. President Ruto claimed on national TV that there were criminals. Can he produce a single criminal who was involved in this business? He has a better intelligence than we do. Can he point out to among those dead people, can he isolate one person who was a criminal that his security forces were justified to kill? This is not how to run a country. You can't brand citizens criminals and kill them and say you are going to do it at all costs. What makes him think that his life is more precious than that of the fellow on the street? If we have to do anything, we must demand accountability for that blood. We must demand that President Ruto produces the criminals he claimed invaded parliament, if they are not citizens. President Ruto must tell us who are these people in civilian and how come that civilians were mingling with armed police, with the uniformed police and shooting people. The time when people said words and they did not, and they got away with it, I think they are behind us. We are talking about the Gen Z. Not all the Gen Z are educated. Not all the Gen Zs are, there were got Gen Zs who came out, who dropped out in class 8, who didn't get an education. And I think about 60% to 70% of the Gen Zs are people who are already dropped through the cracks. And they all came out. People have said that these people were banning schools. I would challenge anybody to tell me where in Kenya was a school banned. No school has ever been banned in Kenya. And I will repeat it, no school has ever been banned in Kenya because what I have seen, because a school is not a dormitory. When these kids were burning dormitories, what statement were they making about this governance of this country? I've never seen a situation whereby kids have burnt books and burnt classrooms. Why is it that all the burning was about dormitories? What statement were they making? Were they crying out for justice? Then you come to say that schools were burning. Not a single school has ever been burnt in this country. Or I'm not aware, but what I've seen is that the dormitories have been burnt in schools, and I know we have got schools that don't have dormitories, but they are still schools. So why were the kids burning the dormitories? We saw another terrible thing happening the other day on our streets. Doctors sleeping outside in the cold, trying to enforce a CBA. Such an important human resource wasting away when we have in a country where people are dying for lack of medication, for lack of attention. And it cannot be true that there's no money to pay these people. You just need to read the reports of the Auditor General, and you'll see that this country is being looted dry. So these people should be employed. We are a Republic of Kenya, and the name Republic is an ideological statement about this country. We have to be governed as a republic. We must be governed as a republic. We are not a kiosk. We have a constitution that says how power should be acquired in this country. And that power, when we have elections, why do people go to Bomas when the constitution says that elections must terminate at the constituency? The next presidential election must end at the constituency for matters to be proper. There's been a call of other things. I hear, I don't know if the cabinet has been dissolved or stuff like that. That is like putting balm on a wound. What we demand, and what I personally think is ready to happen, is that the entire Kenya Kwanza administration, led by Mr. Ruto, must vacate power. The call that Ruto must go is not an idle call. It's a call whose time has come. It's a call whose time has come. Mr. Ruto told us that criminals were on the streets. He has not produced a single criminal. You cannot be told lies every day.
Senator Omtata.
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
Just have your seat. I made myself very clear on how we are going to conduct ourselves during debate on this motion. Inasmuch as we suspended points of order, I said let us be responsible in the way we debate and let us be factual. You cannot call the president Mr. Ruto. This is not a Kamkunji. This is the Senate of the Republic of Kenya. Proceed.
Okay, I can call him Dr. Ruto. And President Ruto. I'm finishing. Dr. Ruto, His Excellency the President.
Proceed.
But he never ceased being a minister, so all those titles apply to him, if my English is correct. So I'm demanding that President Ruto vacates office as the only honorable thing to do. He's unable to balance a budget. It has collapsed. Everything around him is collapsing. So you cannot say that his juniors should bear the burden. The ball stops with him, and the call that President Ruto must go is a call that must be applied. And as they say, a fish begins rotting with the head. So, and among my people they say, a river does not flow higher than its source. And when you look at the sun, you must blink. Justice is crying out. Our children have died, something that has never happened in this country. The president has called them criminals. And the president cannot continue sitting in power when the children have died. And he said you do anything at whatever cost. When the Constitution says you can't do anything at whatever cost. So my call is to associate my voice with those who are saying that the president vacates office. There's no room for all these things we are doing here, and we start off with a new slate. Mr. Speaker, sir, anything less than that will not avenge the blood that has been spilled on our streets. A street that is hallowed, a street that is recognized in the Constitution as an arena for engaging politically. As the arena whereby, when this institution fails, the people of Kenya invoke Article 1 and go to engage. When you desecrate such a venue, you don't do anything. There's not even a call that these things should be investigated. Instead, they're trying to say that we go and have dialogue to assage, to see, I don't know how to distort what is happening, to do whatever, to see how. I just look at these people like prison guards who are fighting for who becomes the chief warden. Then they learn that there's a prison break. So they all forget about what they were fighting for. They say the first thing we must do is to ensure that this prison is not destroyed. Because their business is the prison. Their business is to keep the people in the prison. So they are now coalescing, forgetting about the fight they were having, who becomes the chief warden. Now they are saying the prison must be kept intact. We are not going to allow that. This country has moved. The government that has to govern this country must govern by law. And, Mr. Speaker, sir, I reiterate my words that if really the president values this country, he should do the honorable thing, fall on his sword. President Ruto, fall on your sword and retain, if you have to retain in order. And retain in.
Well, 1 minute, you wind up your thoughts, Senator Mtata. Just 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. What I was saying is that, like in the old days of the Roman soldiers, when they felt that they had brought dishonor to the country, and they were even, the dishonor was so bad that they could not even let another person kill them, they fell on their swords and died. That's the only way they regained their honor. And the only way Ruto can regain in honor is for him to fall on his sword and let the Kenya Kwanza administration die, so that Kenya can have a new beginning. With those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, sir, I thank you.
At that juncture, we will defer that motion and proceed to the next order. Clerk, kindly call the next order.
Order number 9, motion, approval of sittings of the Senate to be held in Busia County.
Senator Omtata, take your seat. Now, honorable senators, we had concluded debate on this particular motion. I will therefore proceed to put the question. They're aware that the Senate of Kenya is established under Article 93 of the Constitution, and its main role, as set out at Article 96, is to represent, serve, and protect the interests of the counties and their governments. Further, aware of the critical role that the Senate plays in the interlinkage between the national and county levels of government, and the need to enhance the interaction between the Senate and the county governments as a means of bringing the Senate closer to the counties and the general public, acknowledging the success made during the sittings of the Senate outside Nairobi, held in Uasin Gishu, Kitui, and Turkana counties in September 2018, 2019, and 2023, respectively. Further acknowledging the recommendation of the Senate Business Committee that a sitting of the Senate be held away from the traditional premises in Parliament buildings, Nairobi, during the term of the 13th Parliament, and the subsequent resolution of the Senate made on the 8th of March 2023 to hold plenary and committee sittings in counties for a one-week period within the month of September in every session of the 4th Senate, except during an election year, with the objective to, 1, promote the role and work of the Senate and enhance public awareness regarding the business of the Senate and Parliament in general. 2, highlight existing and new opportunities for engagement in the legislative process. 3, develop and strengthen partnerships at the county level of government. And 4, provide an opportunity to members and staff of county assemblies to learn and share best practices with senators and parliamentary officers. Now, therefore, pursuant to Article 126(1) of the Constitution, the Senate resolves to hold its plenary and committee sittings in Busia County from the 23rd to the 27th of September 2024. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many as of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Next order.
Order number 10, motion, report of the Select Committee on Delegated Legislation on its consideration of the Social Health Insurance General Regulations 2024 and the Social Health Insurance Tribunal Procedure Rules 2024 division.
We'll defer this order. So we'll proceed to the next order.
Order number 11, the Houses of Parliament Bicameral Relations Bill, National Assembly Bills number 44 of 2023, division.
That particular order is also deferred. Next order.
Order number 12, the Public Finance Management Amendment Bill, Senate Bills number 40 of 2023, division.
That order is also deferred. Next order.
Order number 13, the Constitution of Kenya Amendment number 2 Bill, Senate Bills number 52 of 2023, second reading.
Now, I see two names of honorable senators. I want to be persuaded that they want to contribute to this motion. If not, then kindly log out so that we know exactly how we are transacting this order. That order is deferred. Proceed to the next order. Next order, Clerk.
Order number 14, the Heritage and Museums Bill, Senate Bills number 8 of 2023, second reading.
The Chairperson, Standing Committee on Labor and Social Welfare. That order is deferred. Next order, Clerk.
Order number 15, the Agriculture and Food Authority Amendment Bill, Senate Bills number 13 of 2023, second reading.
Honorable Senator James Murango, the Chairperson, Standing Committee on Agriculture. That order is deferred. Next order.
Order number 16, the County Hall of Fame Bill, Senate Bills number 18 of 2023, second reading.
The Honorable Senator Miraj Abdullahi Abdurrahman. That order is deferred. Next order.
Order number 17, the Rice Bill, Senate Bills number 19 of 2023, second reading.
Senator James Morango, the Chairperson, Standing Committee on Agriculture. That order is deferred. Next order.
Order number 18, the Law of Succession Amendment Bill, Senate Bills number 20 of 2023, second reading.
The Honorable Senator Veronica Maina. That order is deferred. Next order, Clerk.
Order number 19, the Public Holidays Amendment Bill, Senate Bills number 31 of 2023, second reading.
Senator Karungo Thangwa to move. That order is deferred. Next order.
Order number 20, the County Assembly Services Amendment Bill, Senate Bills number 34 of 2023, second reading.
Senator Mohamed Chute. That order is deferred. Next order.
Order number 21, the County Public Finance Laws Amendment Bill, Senate Bills number 39 of 2023, second reading.
The Honorable Senator Kathuri Murungi. That order is deferred. Next order.
Order number 22, the Street Vendors Protection of Livelihood Bill, Senate Bills number 41 of 2023, second reading.
Yes, Senator Mungatana, what is your intervention?
Sorry, Mr. Speaker, I beg your pardon because I was misreading that it was the one for Senator Okenyuri, and I thought you had mentioned Kaduri. So I was just wanted to bring to your attention. I apologize, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Esther Okenyuri.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity. I'm the sponsor of the Street Vendors Bill, that's widely known as the Protection of Livelihood Bill of the Senate, number 41 of 2023. Mr. Speaker, this bill was actually widely also given a lot of attention with the Senate Trade Committee, whereby I serve as the vice chair of that committee. Mr. Speaker, the Street Vendors Bill seeks to provide a framework.
Senator Esther Okenyuri, you first need to move, and then you put your justification on the bill.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the Street Vendors Bill be read for the second time. So allow me to proceed. Mr. Speaker, the Street Vendors Bill is actually an act of parliament that seeks to provide a framework on how street vending should actually happen in this country, and with a lot of preference to our county governments, because this is an issue that touches on counties also. Mr. Speaker, the bill also argues that small-scale trade contributes significantly to this country's economy, and largely as the hustlers, as we called them during our campaign period, Mr. Speaker. So this is a bill that puts their interests at the front line, Mr. Speaker, because these are the people who largely contribute to our economy. In Nairobi, Mr. Speaker, if you walk this afternoon, you will one way or in another meet a street vendor. They are either selling small items as biro pens, others are selling food items, others are doing music, Mr. Speaker, and we also even have others who are doing stuff like shows of magic, whereby people can watch and pay. Mr. Speaker, in other developed democracies, street vending is a huge thing, and there are actually designated places where they actually do their vending. Mr. Speaker, the last time, if you remember, when we went with you on a Powers and Privileges Committee visit to Turkey, I had an opportunity to visit some of the vending zones that had been set aside for street vendors, and I was impressed to see the levels of hygiene in those areas, and I compared that to my country back here, and I felt we surely need to have a very organized way and dignified way that our street vendors can make money for themselves and for our county government and national government, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, street vending has largely been looked at as a very small business. This is not a small business as people look at it. This is a huge sector, because when you look at it, those are the ones who are running this economy, Mr. Speaker. We do not have them having huge money that they are putting in this sector, but whatever little they are putting together is what is enabling this economy run. Mr. Speaker, I also want to mention that in the recent past, we've seen headlines of how street vendors have been handled badly in this country. And I want to mention the county government of Nairobi. We saw some time back a disabled lady, I think in Embakasi, who was selling eggs, and the eggs were actually thrown away, and the lady also carried away with her wheelchair, Mr. Speaker. We shouldn't be witnessing such kind of harassment to people who are contributing to this economy. Instead, we need to look at how better to place them so that they do their business in a dignified manner, so that it's also even easy for the county government and national government to collect tax from this kind of businesses. Mr. Speaker, another reason why we need to have street vending have designated areas, so that we have order, we restore order in the cities. Look at the city of Kisumu, look at the city of Nairobi, look at the city of Mombasa. We want, when we have visitors coming in, or those who are coming from the rural areas, can have a clean city, Mr. Speaker. This can only happen when we have a joint effort to the stakeholders in this sector and the government, so that the street vendors don't look at this bill as one that is curtailing their business, but look at it as one that is making them do business easily. Mr. Speaker, when I was actually coming up with this, we had an opportunity to have most of their organizations come to the table and present what they felt needed to be accommodated by this legislative proposal, and we took up most of the suggestions that were brought up by the street vendors. And I'm also looking forward that we are going to have political goodwill, especially from the county government. Mr. Speaker, look at a county like Busia. A county like Busia has street vendors from the Kenyan side and from the Ugandan side. So we have to coexist in a manner that the Kenyan vendors are making money, and in the spirit of good neighborhood, the ones on the Ugandan side are also contributing to this economy, but also watch out to avoid exploitation, especially for our local vendors who are doing business, Mr. Speaker. And this case also applies for the ones who are down in Namanga, bordering Tanzania on the other side, Mr. Speaker. You clearly see why we now need these regulations, so that internally we have a way of doing business, and we also have a way of doing business with our neighbors without one party taking advantage of the other party, Mr. Speaker. Street vending is not just about the ones who are selling small items. I actually mentioned of, right now we have young people who play guitar on the street. If you go to Mamangina Street, you'll see young people who are playing very nice music with their guitar. This is also a way of informal trading, but then they are doing it basing on the talents they have. So it's not just about objects or items that you can carry. It's about also providing a service and make money out of that service that you're offering to the public. And mostly we are seeing that in form of entertainment, Mr. Speaker. So this is a timely bill that I need support from this House, Mr. Speaker, so that we provide a conducive environment for our young people, for our women, for our men who want to better their livelihood by putting something in their pocket, and at the same time assist the government in generating revenue that will go a large mile in financing what activities we have in place, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, if I also mention, in other countries, when you look at how they are handling generally the issue of informal trading, is completely different. And it's because in those countries they had an opportunity to make laws way earlier. So when someone is coming into a business, they already know what is required. Even you who's building stalls to provide an avenue for people who want to engage in formal trading, you will design the stalls in a manner that follows what the law prescribes, Mr. Speaker. But when you look at our case here and want to place emphasis on counties, counties will quickly want to tax people who are selling on the roadside. Let's say women who are selling vegetables, men who are selling groundnuts. You can't tax people when you do not provide a conducive environment for them to thrive in their business, Mr. Speaker. It would be a very good idea when a county government has provided a designated area for men who are selling groundnuts, so that they are selling their items in a comfortable way, in a clean environment, with security, so they will not even feel the pinch when they are contributing to the economy through taxing. But when you tax people and they cannot see the value of the money you're taxing them, then you are likely to face resistance when you are coming to introduce these regulations, Mr. Speaker. So it's my hope that the 47 county governments will actually cooperate, and there was already goodwill because the chair of the COG Trade, Governor Otuoma, the governor for Busia, when we were collecting views from the different stakeholders, COG were among the ones who brought their views, and that was a good show of political goodwill. But then enforcement is one issue that I know we are going to witness challenges, because already in other different towns, strategic planning was done in the 1960s and 70s, which does not tally with the recent developments we have currently, Mr. Speaker. So this legislative proposal is very timely, and it accommodates all people from all walks of life who want to do any informal kind of trading and make money, than engage in other activities that we are discouraging the general public from engaging in. especially the young people. As a young person, I know how difficult it is to still go to school, have academic qualification, but still lack something to put in your pocket. Mr. Speaker, so street vending is not just about the ones who walk around the bus stations selling whatever items they have, but it also accommodates the ones who have any other kinds of informal trading. And that's why this legislative proposal seeks to recognize, because there are kind of activities that are currently being carried out and not formally recognized in our systems. The moment a business is recognized, you are equally able to even benefit from what the SACCOs are issuing in form of loans, what the government is issuing to assist those who are trading. But when you're not in an organized manner, it actually even becomes very difficult for you to seek support to broaden your business, Mr. Speaker. The other issue is about our authorities. Our authorities, there's a bill here we dealt with, especially on county licensing. We are looking at authorities that will be having many businesses to get money from. But my plea is that these authorities should not treat the traders in a punitive manner, because we look forward to encouraging these traders to actually do well in whatever areas they are engaging in. So the moment you want to punish innocent citizens who have no idea on what already is expected of them, we are going to discourage them from engaging in business, Mr. Speaker. Initially in this country, we've seen different administrations in our then local councils, the defunct councils we had. Defunct councils had a challenge even moving the traders from one point and relocating them to another point. And we are still experiencing the same challenge, Mr. Speaker. So this bill will actually provide for a structured way of moving traders from one point to their designated areas. When this is actually done, it even makes it easier for you to look for what you want. If you want maybe to purchase certain kind of baby items, you know where to go and get them, Mr. Speaker. I also saw this arrangement when I traveled to Dubai. Street vending happens even late in the night. Why? Because security is provided for those businesses. And those businesses have no problem with paying taxes because they have security, there is water, there is sanitation. So people are comfortably doing their businesses without little challenges here and there that we are currently facing in third world countries like Kenya, Mr. Speaker. So I really feel this House needs to support me in seeing this get to fruition, Mr. Speaker. In my own county of origin, Mr. Speaker, we have several women who sell vegetables on the roadside. They have not been able to move to the market because we do not have a structured way of accommodating them in those markets. Like I said, strategic planning for different towns was done way back in those years, and we need to readjust to accommodate such kind of people who are engaging in business currently. Mr. Speaker, all this that we are suggesting is not a new thing. We, all of us, want to align to sustainable development goals. In different countries across the world, informal trading is not a new thing. It's only that in Kenya we now want to put this into law so that we do not have people who are informal trading being harassed. Every other time I watch the news, I read statistics and stories of very sad cases of where women who are coming all the way from Mlolongo coming to sell their product in Nairobi, sometimes end up with their products being confiscated all together. Mr. Speaker, we do not want, why would you confiscate someone's items, still subject them to arrest, and eventually destroy those items? Once you arrest someone who is actually engaging in such kind of trade, if they have already been penalized, don't go ahead and destroy their property, Mr. Speaker. Our mantra as the Kenya Kwanza government was to dignify the work that people are doing. The moment you want to treat people in that manner, you are already doing the opposite of what we anticipate, Mr. Speaker. And I want to urge the young people across this country to acquaint themselves with this legislative proposal. I might not be in a position to visit all those areas and see the different small trading that you engage in. But by me representing you with this proposal in this House, I believe it will go a long way in assisting so many other people who will come after us, Mr. Speaker. So this is a timely bill, and I want to conclude by saying that there are so many other aspects I might not have touched on. We have done even, I went ahead to do a comparative analysis of what is happening in other countries, why that kind of having small trading areas set aside works better, why it's not working better in those countries, what have they done to better that kind of trade. Mr. Speaker, like if I mention, we largely talk about Singapore having done very well, Mr. Speaker. Singapore has more than, by the time they were in the late 1960s, Mr. Speaker, they had more than 24,000 street hawkers out of a population of 2 million. Currently, I know that must have grown. Mr. Speaker, in Kenya, the percentages are very high. You cannot bury your head in the sand and say we do not have such kind of traders. Even when you're on traffic, you have someone who's trying to sell you a wall hanging. You have someone who's trying to sell you some flowers to put in your flower vases in the house. Mr. Speaker, that's the kind of businesses we want to harness and put in a structured format so that they can equally make money for themselves and also contribute effectively to this economy, Mr. Speaker. And I know this will actually open a wide area for county governments to make money that is contributing to their own sources of revenue, which is one thing I've been largely encouraging the county chiefs, Mr. Speaker. The county chiefs, I am always encouraging them to look for ways of beefing their own sources of revenue. Instead of waiting for what the national government is going to allocate to them, own sources of revenue will actually open up ways of sorting out the different bills they have, Mr. Speaker. So the moment we structure this kind of businesses in the different counties, I want to believe, Mr. Speaker, that we are going to raise more revenue to developers as a country and as the different county governments that we have, Mr. Speaker, so that we do not have the discussion we had recently of wanting to point an image of devolution not working. We have actually had different visits, Mr. Speaker, first in the Trade Committee, where these ideas originated from, and we've seen businesses working. We've seen what it is like when you support such kind of small-scale business people to venture in their different areas best, Mr. Speaker. So the moment we see such working, we shouldn't encourage the discussion of devolution not working. it's only not working in those small areas that have turned out to be corrupt, Mr. Speaker. And I know we are now in agreement that we want to drain the swamp, Mr. Speaker. And draining the swamp begins from the Senate, Mr. Speaker. I have always said this Senate must bite, Mr. Speaker. Let us not look like we are a house of lamentations, Mr. Speaker. So as I actually take my seat, this is a bill that needs our support jointly, Mr. Speaker. Decisions we as a Senate make are life and death decisions, and that's why it's very important for us to spare a moment and accommodate proposals that originate from different angles, Mr. Speaker, because business, same as academic work, actually does not know if you're rich or poor. You are trying to have something in your pocket so that you can survive the next day, Mr. Speaker. So thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to stop my contribution at that point.
So who is your seconder?
Mr. Speaker, I'm very happy to see my chair is in the chamber, the Senator for Kajiado, Senator Seki. I want to welcome him to second this bill.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker, and I take this opportunity to second this important bill on the street vendors and protection livelihood bill, bill number of 2023. And I want to say that, Honorable Speaker, this bill has come the right time when we are in the position where we are still on the area where we have county governments, and the devolution is underway, where counties are making progresses in different aspects, particularly on issues where we want to say that the common mwananchi is struggling through the MSMEs and small businesses, Jua Kali sector, people from different sectors, particularly on business, small businesses, are struggling in our street, in our towns, to make food on the table, to put that food on the table. Honorable Speaker, we deliberated as a committee on this bill, and we invited quite a number of stakeholders, including the street vendors, small business enterprises, Jua Kali sector, and quite a number of other business enterprises. And we deliberate on the bill quite well. And we want to say that, I want to say on the onset that this bill has touched quite a number of areas on issues of the way on how businesses, the counties, municipalities will also handle the small, medium people or even businesses in our counties. Honorable Speaker, at the clause 4, we found that it is good that we give the Cabinet Secretary to have one database of the entire country to all the businesses in the county, particularly the vendors in the country. And this will be liaison with county governments, which are more in touch in the county governments, particularly in our streets, in our businesses, in our towns. And that clause tries to explain on how the movement of businesses will be taken care of, so that the database can be kept by the ministry in the entire country, but more with the liaison of the county governments. Section part 3 of the bill, we were looking at it at the area where we bring the designation of vending zones. We look at it like to designate the vending zones is a very important aspect, which we normally, in fact, it is not there in most of our counties, in most of our big towns, municipalities, most of the big municipalities like Nairobi, Eldoret, Mombasa, Kisumu, and many other municipalities that we do have. Honorable Speaker, this is where, and I think it is something that Honorable Senator Hazy has tried to put it very clearly, that we have done quite a number of research in other counties, in other countries, and we found that it is good that we have to define the restrictions and of free areas where we categorize free zones. We brought in the issue of restricted vending zones and non-vending zones. These are important aspects in this. These are areas of importance in this bill. Honorable Speaker, we further went down to this bill further went down to bring the sanity in areas of planning of our towns, and to explain on how, where is suited, or which area is suited for vending, which one is not important due to population, due to density, the area which are density populated. And this bill will help the common mwananchi and even the movement of people, because you realize that in most of the towns, it is hardly for us to get even people getting even out of town. There are a lot of congestion of peoples and even vehicles, just because you just find somewhere, you put your items on the ground and you start selling. Other people are even selling outside, you know, they go out and even just place their goods and services, or even goods in outside their door shops. So that is where this bill tries to protect, to try to protect the interest of those people also who have businesses in their shops. So I think this is it's a very important bill. And Honorable Speaker, this in section, there is a way where we also looked at how the vendors will be protected, and the rights of a vendor is designed in a way that county government officials or county askaris or officers from the ministry, from the county, will not just decide to, vandalize or even take out the vendors' goods because they have not paid the fee for the county. This bill tries to protect even the vendor. So with this bill, I think it is a win-win situation where the county government will have the sanity on how to do their things, plan their towns, and also protect the protection of a vendor, a businessman, a business person, a business, small enterprise that is coming up. Because we have seen quite a number of, officers or even business people losing their properties. People, the business people losing their goods through askaris coming to, pick them, even sometimes harassment of business people. This bill tries to protect the vendors. So, and the hawkers will really see the hope of, or the light on the tunnel, because this bill tries to protect all this. So, Honorable Speaker, I want to support this bill. I want to say that this is the right time where county governments will be in the right track, and it will also give county governments and county assembly a chance to do more regulations on how to implement these restrictions, particularly on how it will suit the issues of planning in their counties. So I don't want to take much of the time and give more other members to deliberate and even discuss on this bill, but I want to say that this is a very important bill to the counties, and it will go hand in hand with the bill that the same committee has approved some times back, and I'm happy that it was even there this afternoon, the county licensing bill, which has been, in fact, act now, because it has been assented by the president, and this bill will definitely go hand in hand with that bill. So, Honorable Speaker, I want to second. Thank you very much.
Honorable Senators, I will now proceed to propose the question that the Street Vendors Protection of Livelihood Bill, Senate Bills number 41 of 2023, be now read a second time. Senator Tabitha.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I do rise to support the Street Vendors Bill 2023 by Senator Esi, and I want to really congratulate her for taking her time and walking the journey with this great bill. And I keep on saying, do not forget where you've come from, because Senator Esi has given her story, her journey, and this is an indication that she has not forgotten where she's come from, in terms of ensuring that you remember also the other people, because this bill touches mostly on the small-scale business people, and much more specific, actually, on them having, an environment that is suitable for them to be able to conduct business. Mr. Speaker, apparently, today we seem to be few, and so I was seated actually to Senator Esi, next to Senator Esi earlier, as you're calling the owners of the other bills. And I'm so proud of her because as the others were absent, she still said she was ready. She's always ready, a good indication for the kind of young leaders that we have, and they are always prepared. And she has taken us through. I've also perused through the same bill. I've looked at some of the clauses, case example clause 5 of the bill, Mr. Speaker, which talked about a vending license, under the section shall include the following: the applicant's name, the type of license, the vending location, the contact of the applicants, type of goods and services to be sold, the type and date of vending activities where applicable, time of... In short, it includes a lot of details that are very important, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we've been having illegal vending or vendors, selling illegal goods. And so without this particular data, as it has been indicated in clause 5, then it becomes difficult to be able to have a reference point of who was the vendor, where they are located. And also without this information, then also people evade to make or pay their dues as required. Allow me to narrow it, Mr. Speaker, as far as the county of Nairobi is concerned. Earlier last year, I had received some complaints from the people of South B and South C on unscrupulous vendors who've decided to put their goods. And this, to be more specific, these are the construction items, the sand, the ballast, outside people's gates, within the courts, within the estates. And people have decided to start selling and merchandising sand and ballast, among other hardware materials, something that really disturbed the people of South B and South C, issues that I was also able to raise through the Nairobi County as to why these people had the confidence to, just come and disrupt the well-organized estate structures and start setting, and putting their merchandise out there without the consent of the other estate dwellers. So with this type of bill, with this street vendors bill, Mr. Speaker, and as I've also deeply looked at it, it's going to set aside. Clause 4 talks about a proposed vending zone plan by the county. So if the county is going to adhere and ensure they set aside the zones and license as per the zones, we will not be having where people are waking up and deciding to set structures anyhow, anywhere in these different counties. There will be a plan. There will be a better structure and strategy on ensuring that there is adequate space, there is adequate room. There is also an organized marketplace whereby people are able to specifically know that in this particular area, they can be able to get the merchandise or the services they actually do need, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, looking at where we are with the political temperatures, also our young people, the Gen Z, who've come out and they're very, as I said earlier, they're very informed, very well articulative of their issues. They're very innovative, Mr. Speaker, and it is through such organized vending processes that our young people will be able also to get equal opportunities and be able to have an environment when the county adheres to this particular bill, be able to set spaces for them. I heard the Senator AC talk about vending environments and spaces that will consider people with disability, will consider women, will also consider more specifically the young people, and they can be able to showcase their very skillful talents and their very products that they've been able to come up with because they've been given an opportunity and an environment that is able to help them enhance and grow their concepts, their businesses, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I've traveled here and there, and I've also come across whereby in other countries we've seen people having what we call the monthly showcase, especially when it comes to a specific product. Case example, the food industry. We have what we call the vendors, showcasing their different culture or ways of offering a service or a product. And case example with the food industry, you find that, Mr. Speaker, people are able to showcase variety. It is more cultural. There's also the business perspective. There's also the know-how of something different that maybe someone has not come across. But through this street vendor, through this bill, there can also be room whereby the counties themselves set specific days that the people are able to showcase different products. It could be a product. It can also be a service within the street for free, so that they also enhance their market. They do the marketing. They also showcase and give samples for the different products at a very minimal cost, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in this bill, I've seen the issue of the license fee, and I would want to say that some of the challenges that are there is in regards to how much vendors need to pay. There needs to be, if the senator would introduce whereby when this is set, the first 3 months or the first 6 months, or within a duration, this can encourage startup vendors whose capital is at a minimal level or at a minimal amount, so that they reduce on their cost by giving them an opportunity to be able to be encouraged with what they've been able to conceptualize, which they've also been able to innovate, for them to have a space that in the first 3 months, 4 months, there's room for free vending at no cost. This will be able to encourage even our young people, whereby raising capital is a challenge. We know the market rates, the banking interest rates are very high. There's also the issues of collateral when you want to do startups. And with ensuring that what the county can do by removing this cost within a given time, it will be able to encourage the young people and even any startup that one wants to or needs to start, Mr. Speaker. I've also seen in the bill that, we have situations whereby during expansions of roads or expansion of any construction or anything that needs to be done, the vendors are normally pushed away. But with this bill and with the guidance of the county zoning these particular areas, then there will be smooth futuristic planning of the different vendors, since then they need not to worry of when the authorities will come and ask them to be able to move aside for more development. They can be able to set up with the confidence of the future. Part 4, Mr. Speaker, talks about registration and licensing of street vendors. Article 15(2)(a) talks about, for the purposes of subsection, the county executive shall provide a physical and an online submission of application for registration by the vendors. B, maintain an up-to-date online registry. Mr. Speaker, what attracts me here is a digital aspect. And as I've always said, as a digital ambassador for ICDL, Mr. Speaker, I always advocate for things to be digital. The government has also been steering the digital hubs through the Ministry of ICT. And seeing a bill whereby the digital factor is also considered, registration being online, that's where we are. That's what we need to embrace. This definitely will cut unnecessary cost. You just need your gadget, you just need to dial the number that you need, and you are able to input your details there. You are able to get your license online with minimal movements, and this is where this is where we are today, Mr. Speaker. So I really do appreciate Senator AC with this bill and do really support, because as a business person, this is then what encourages the small micro entrepreneurs to be able to be confident to set up their businesses in an environment that is very, very suitable. With those many and few remarks, I do support, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Tabitha, for your contribution to this important bill. I now invite Senator Mogatana Buya Danson to also have his contributions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, many years ago, when we were younger and we were in the university, and as students of law, we were required to buy shirts for purposes of the moot court. Moot court is where we do these presentations in competitions, and you are able to showcase what you have been learning in a practical setup. The law students are meant to do defense of their clients and so on. So, Mr. Speaker, I went to buy a shirt from one of the vendors. You know, all of us were dressing in mitumbas those days, Mr. Speaker. That's what we could afford. So you have this guy telling you male kwa male, male kwa male, male kwa male. He says this is a clean, nice shirt, and it was in the evening. It was as usual, last-minute purchase because you wanted to comply with what you've been told tomorrow. Then in the morning you wake up, you see the shirt is actually not a white shirt, Mr. Speaker. And you try to go and trace that vendor, Mr. Speaker, you will never be able to trace him. And I'm not the only one, Mr. Speaker. Many people have been sold watches that turn out not to be watches. Other people have been sold mobile phones that turn out to be toys. Mr. Speaker, all of us have gone through these experiences in one way or the other. So, Mr. Speaker, this law is a good law because this law is saying we want to regulate this trade. In many countries, Mr. Speaker, a hawker or a street vendor would be wearing a registration. So you know from his registration that you can trace him. He's wearing something on his collar that says, I've been licensed by Nairobi City Council or Nairobi City government to do selling of toys, selling of handkerchiefs, and they're able to be traced, and they're able to be regulated. Mr. Speaker, many students who finish university and are not able to secure formal jobs have gone to do this type of business. And Mr. Speaker, some very prominent businessmen also started by selling sweets in the streets, and then they went on to graduate to other things, opened supermarkets, opened very important commercial enterprises that we are proud of nowadays. So, Mr. Speaker, this law is a kind of law that we welcome. And I support the fact that there is a need for regulating the work, and this is work that people do in the streets. And the idea is to create confidence that if I am buying a belt from this gentleman is registered, this gentleman has this number on his registration. So I know if he's selling me a bad belt, I will be able to trace him. If he's selling me goods that are not proper, then I'm able to get a relief. So, Mr. Speaker, this is a very beautiful development. And my take is that we have to give more role to the county governments. The county governments are the ones who basically, even before the new constitution came, they used to deal with matters to do with markets and street vending. So we need, without going too much into controlling what they do, we need to have this framework, as we have said. And this framework will give county governments, such as the county government of Tana River, the ability to do the right things with these young men and young women who are doing street jobs. These people need to be given proper identification. They need to be known by the county government, to be given proper respect, even their organizations to be recognized by the county, and Mr. Speaker, to be supported so that areas which, like this law suggests, are designated for this kind of goods, then the county government is able to set out those areas so that people are able to do work with dignity. Every job in this country is a dignified job, and this street vending is also one of those jobs that this law seeks to dignify. Mr. Speaker, we do not want a situation where county askaris, they come and find you, you are selling your sweets near the bus stop, and they chase you away. And yet you have registered properly. We want respect, Mr. Speaker. We don't want a situation where disabled hawkers are mistreated by county governments, county inspectorate. This law, Mr. Speaker, will give that respectability that is required for any person who is doing the business or the work of vending. Mr. Speaker, when we have this law, it is also going to be easier for the county governments and even the national governments where necessary to deal with issues that can arise. Mr. Speaker, I remember in Zambia, not so long ago, there was a cholera outbreak in Lusaka, in some parts of Lusaka. And so the hawkers were told, you cannot trade, you cannot do this business. Now, Mr. Speaker, if we have people within a database, county government knows in this area, we know so and so operates around this area. In this street, we know so and so operates around this. If we have health risks, Mr. Speaker, it is very easy to talk to these people and tell them, in the entire of this area, you cannot operate, but we can agree that you move to the other side of the county where you can do your business on the other side and not this other side. So that even for purposes of public safety, Mr. Speaker, we are able to control and give dignity and confidence to the people who do this kind of business. Mr. Speaker, we have had a very strong expression of the fact that our young people want space. They want space in this economy. And I've said before, and I will say it again, that what our young people are doing, they are looking for economic liberation, which is the third liberation. And they're looking at questions and answers within our economy. How is our economy providing for us? How is it doing? So, Mr. Speaker, creating all these opportunities through a legal framework, it helps to expand the areas in which we can deal with the bulging problem of unemployment. Mr. Speaker, street vending is an old trade, Mr. Speaker, and it has evolved over time. Some time ago, people used to use carts. Nowadays, Mr. Speaker, people not only walk from place to place, but they also vend their services using the internet, using apps from various internet solutions. So, Mr. Speaker, it's critical for us to have database for the safety of the people, safety of the public from where we come from, and also to give the public confidence that the person they are dealing with is a registered person, is a person who is paying tax, is a person who can be trusted, that when he tells you this hat, this belt, this whatever is good, then you can purchase without having the worry that maybe you're losing your money to some unregistered fellows. Mr. Speaker, we support this law because it is a good law, and it is a kind of law that is dealing with the lowest of the law, people who are getting into the world, people who have finished schooling and they are getting into the world, they are getting started, people who have ambitions to do certain things. And maybe they may not have the money to start the hardware, but they are working with their padlocks, they are working with their screwdrivers and so on. Maybe this person in another 5 years is going to be operating his hardware. We are giving dignity to this kind of employment that is all over our towns in this country. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to congratulate the Honorable Senator Okenyuri for thinking about this, because it is a good thing to support and formalize the informal sector, which has employed so many more people than even the ones who are employed in the formal sector. Mr. Speaker, I pray that every senator who will speak to this, Mr. Speaker, will give their support, and I personally support it and congratulate the Honorable Senator. Mr. Speaker, I beg to support. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Mugatana. Senator Manzo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me an opportunity to contribute into this very important law. Mr. Speaker, this law, although prepared months ago, Senator Eze seems to have been thinking and to have been knowing what is happening to many young people in this country. Mr. Speaker, in the country, you know, the government cannot hire everybody. Not all young people or young graduates or people who have been to school can be hired by the counties nor the national government. And therefore, there was need, Mr. Speaker, for job creation. And this is one way of people beginning small businesses and growing them into big-time international businesses. Mr. Speaker, this country is endowed with youths who are very intelligent, who are computer savvy, who have embraced ICT, who have been well-schooled, and many of them have no opportunity to ever have work experience other than starting their own businesses. So street vending, as my good friend Senator Mugatana said, is all over the world. You'll find it in New York, you'll find it in Washington, D.C., you'll find it in London, you'll find it in China, Beijing. Everywhere in the world, there is street vending, but it is done in such an organized manner. If you see the food kiosks in Washington, D.C., they are very clean, they are on the streets, and the people eat fairly cheap food there, and you can find even all manner of dishes from all over the world. If you want pilau, you can find it there. If you want some different cultures, delicacies, you find them in the streets of Washington. You will not find any litter around that, you know, so the environment is kept clean. And you needed a regulation to regulate that. When you come to the African experience, it's fairly chaotic. You know, people have to learn to not to throw bottles outside a matatu or paper, where you have eaten the sweets, you throw it through the window of matatu, and no one cares about it. It's a high time we developed a culture of cleanliness, and the counties making sure that the streets are clean, and therefore these businesses are planned properly. I have seen that the minister in charge of trade can make regulations. The county governments will also make regulations. There are laws already which exist, and there are systems which already exist, but they have not been able to serve the people of Kenya. The street vendors have been mistreated in many counties. Some have even been killed by city askaris or county askaris, rungus, and there's no recourse. Others injured, maimed, and their goods and wares confiscated in a scenario which is totally disappointing, as beginners or poor people, they have no chance in life. There are many, many people who carry goods and sell them on the streets, but they are harassed by you know, the existing laws. And therefore, there was a need to protect and to nurture such businesses into big-time businesses. And this law will serve such, so that you can have organized street vending. Already there is sometimes they organize, you know, in the car parks, selling of African regalia, kitenges, and all that, Maasai beads. It comes periodically. It doesn't have a certain law. It is even better when certain streets are gazetted and preserved for this trade and in an organized manner, and the young people will self-employ themselves. If you work hard, you will definitely get into success. But unfortunately, when there is taxation at national level and taxation at county level, or levies of all manner, then whatever little these people are able to collect daily, it's just quite a big, huge chunk is taken away. There's nothing wrong with taxation, either at county level or at national level. But the problem is, do those levies make your life better at the county level? Do those levies make your life better at the national level? Therefore, street vending comes with taxation, but the taxation has to be reasonable. It should not be such a way that to kill those businesses. And then, more importantly, if these street vendors are organized in circles, in cooperatives, it becomes better. They should be able to make savings so that they can grow their businesses. When I was a secretary of cooperatives, there were organized street cooperatives, circles, and one of the most successful one was with the mechanics in Kisumu. And every day, everybody who has been trying to make a living the whole day will make a saving in the evening. And that kitty was so big that they could borrow money there and improve their businesses. Borrow money there and come up with something reasonable. I am aware that the cooperative bank has a system of loaning mama bogas. So they are given the money very early in the morning. They go to the city markets, they buy their wares, they sell them somewhere in the streets, and they are able to, you know, to return the monies later in the day or in a week with a profit. And they are able to advance their lives, and they are able to take their children to school, and they are able to have hope and have a living. And now that we need to grow our economy, we need to give hope to the young people. We need to give hope to the poor. The system should not be such that a poor person will never have some breathing space. The system, Mr. Speaker, should be such that everybody has an opportunity. And I believe a lot of families have business skills and are able to sell goods, you know, from shoes, from sweets, all manner of businesses, and able to make a profit no matter how small. But more importantly, we need to take care of the disabled people. Every time I meet people in the streets or beggars at the traffic lights, as I give them something small, even if they have disability, even if they have one hand, I take time to talk to them, to encourage them that they can do something more useful other than begging in the streets. They can end up with businesses. But how does that person end up with a license? Licensing itself is chaotic. How do those street vendors end up with a clean environment? And it is very important that as a nation, we grow even the smallest. Everybody in Kenya should feel their entitlement, that they're in a country they can grow, that they're in a country they can do business, no matter how small, from selling fruits, from selling, boga, from selling clothes, even second-hand clothes, whatever clothes they have, whatever wares they have. There are others even who sell car accessories. They walk along distances, and they save people's time who have no time to walk to the shops. And these are the people who eventually grow into bigger shops, more settled, more organized, will even pay bigger levies to the counties. And subsequently, the spending power is enhanced, and they are able now to grow their lifestyles and come up. Therefore, a law like this and a time like this is important, Mr. Speaker, so that everyone is accorded an opportunity. But this particular law must protect these people. And the people themselves must be responsible. And that's why I'm saying when they are organized in cooperatives and in circles, it's much better. It will ensure cleanliness. It will ensure good planning. It will ensure that some certain streets are preserved so that if you want to brush your shoe, you know you can do it after this certain interval. If you know a place you can buy, cheap food, clean, on the streets, a cup of tea, then you know where those kiosks are, and the people can even, have a place along the street there. There are so many spaces even in the city of Nairobi. You can arrange these businesses cleanly. But also make sure that we have a proper system of garbage collection. In many of the counties you go, you find these garbages have overspilled, You know, they are supposed to be carried away, and even it is not clear where they are going to be dumped, deposited, how they are going to be processed. And garbage collection is big business in many parts of the world. We need to come up with regulations whereby, you know, if it is bottles, plastic, you know, they are in one place. If it is a glass bottle, one place. If it is organic material, all of it in one place. Can even be used to process organic fertilizer. You know, different sort of discipline and a culture, which must be grown through the counties and the county governments, and generally educating the people. So in the regulation, you could come up with something which will make Kenyans, you know, more responsible, so that we can manage all that. And then garbage doesn't accrue everywhere, all over the place. Even the garbage transporters, Mr. Speaker, you see the lorry is overloaded and it has collected garbage and it is spewing more garbage on the streets. Who will collect this garbage? Who will, you know, ensure that the environment is clean? And then, Mr. Speaker, certain parts of the cities, you know, have such rats and you know, other venoms which could transport disease. Therefore, there must be a system of making sure you have a natural system of dealing with the rats and other things, as it is in many cities. Some people keep cats, and you will have some balance of some sort. And therefore, it's a whole enterprise, Mr. Speaker, which should run into every small market and every big market, every city in our nation, and be well planned, be embraced by the people, be embraced by the county governments, and be embraced by the national government. And therefore, it needs a big discussion. It needs a very, very big discussion. But most important, we must get things right as far as governance is concerned, from the counties and to the national government, to make sure that these people are accorded the necessary opportunity to grow. And similarly, give an opportunity to every child of the nation. Education is an equalizer. When people are educated, then we'll have more plumbers, we'll have people with business skills, people with knowledge of bookkeeping, probably from colleges, you know, locally available, so that they also learn how to make business better. So that when we grow these businesses of vendors, then the vendors are likely, you know, to know how to organize themselves to make sure that they make a profit, to make sure that they can save, either in a SACCO or in a bank, and to make sure that they can borrow and be able to pay and grow their businesses. And when you do that, Mr. Speaker, and with the proper climate in the country, where transportation is easy, by reducing the taxes of you know, traders and of fuel, then everyone will feel easy to move their goods. Everyone, even dealing with mkokoteni, will know that they have an opportunity to take their children to school and to feed themselves and to grow. And more importantly also, food, you know, the selling of food, Mr. Speaker, be they cereals, the necessary cleanliness, and making sure that everything is right in this regard. And therefore, there must be places people can clean their hands. There must be the washroom facilities done by the counties, because they move together, these things, so that the street business becomes profitable. You heard Mugatana talking of outbreak. You know, when people don't keep cleanliness, then there are outbreak. And one of the major way of achieving and dealing with the disease is water provision, so that the taps of Nairobi are not dry, so that the taps of different county headquarters and different towns are not dry. But the moment there is no water, then even somebody who is roasting maize on the streets, which is a business, they are venting there, then they should have the necessary cleanness, so that in case of an outbreak, they don't give disease to other people. And diseases like cholera are extremely dangerous, kill many people. And therefore, all that has to be put together by the regulations coming from the minister and the regulations coming from the county government. Mr. Speaker, I beg to support and hope that this will be embraced in the right direction, in the right attitude by the counties, and even the county assemblies take key measures to have similar legislations done for the local counties so that, Mr. Speaker, this can be achieved. I thank you and I second.
Thank you very much, Senator Manzo, for your contribution. Senator Tabitha, what is your intervention?
A personal statement.
Give her the mic, clerk.
Oh, sorry. It's on a personal statement to the inaccurate reporting on contribution to the motion of the current state of the nation.
Well, as Senator Tabitha, I am aware that we are out of statement hour, but I'm notified that the substantive speaker had approved your reading of the statement. Proceed to read the statement.
Thank you.
Pursuant to Standing Order number 58.
Thank you. Thank you, Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. Personal statement, inaccurate reporting on contribution to the motion of the current state of the nation. Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 58 to make a personal statement concerning inaccurate reporting on mainstream media on my contribution on the motion before the Senate on the current state of the nation. Mr. Speaker, sir, during the afternoon sitting of the Senate held on Wednesday, 10th July 2024, some sections of the mainstream media have misconstrued my remarks to mean that I was supporting the rejected Finance Bill 2024. This is not true. My position is that whereas some clauses in the bill may not have been offensive, what the country went through, that included loss of lives, injuries, vandalism, and destruction of property, the Finance Bill 2024 should be withdrawn in its entirety. I thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. Signed by Senator Tabitha Karanja Keroche, my Deputy Majority Leader, Senator for Nakuru County. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Senator Keroche. Senator Tobiko Peris.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, you know, the statement by Senator Keroche Tabitha almost disrupted, you know, the flow of the motion and the flow of thought on this very important bill that we were discussing, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, thank you for the opportunity either way. Mr. Speaker, let me congratulate Senator AC for this beautiful, piece of legislation, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this will be one of the most important and relevant pieces of legislation that have gone through the floor of the House that are relevant to our counties, that is relevant to our daily lives in this country, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, you realize that in our country, it's only a very small percentage of people who are in formal employment, Mr. Speaker. And so quite a majority of Kenyans are hustling for a living. They are venting, in our counties, in our towns, in our cities, Mr. Speaker. And so this legislation will bring sanity, into and order into the lives of very many people who are venting for a livelihood, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, let me say this legislation will also entrench the rights, of those in the informal trading, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it helps also, to organize and to plan properly how public space is used, Mr. Speaker, in our towns. Because sometimes, Mr. Speaker, you sympathize with both the vendors and those who are not vending. Because sometimes there is such disorder and you are unable to move at certain hours in our towns, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, of course, it's good to use, the places you know best. Mr. Speaker, there are streets in Kitengela that, whereas the roads have been done, they are almost impassable because of street vending. If only these people will be organized better. If only these people, those, as this legislation is proposing, that vending zones are created, that this is a restricted area, this is a space for vending, this is partial for certain hours, Mr. Speaker, then there will be order in our lives, Mr. Speaker, and in our towns. Mr. Speaker, it is also good to dignify this sort of, way of livelihood. To dignify because every person there who is vending is a parent with children, with a family to take care of. And at the end of the day, Mr. Speaker, whatever you do for a livelihood, whether you're a house help, whether you're a street vendor, whether you're a member of parliament or whatever position you occupy in society, Mr. Speaker, the most important thing is that there is dignity in the job that you do, and that there is respect, that those who are your customers respect you, those who are, let's say in our counties, giving the regulations respect you, and give you an enabling environment to work, Mr. Speaker. And so, Mr. Speaker, I take this bill to be very important, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, planning brings order. Whether in personal life or in business or in politics or, in leadership, everything needs order and planning, Mr. Speaker. And so when we get designated zones, so that if I go to Kitengela today or Rongai, this is the street for clothes. I'll buy clothes in this street. And if it is foodstuffs you're looking for, you go to street B. If it is, other items, maybe electricals, those music whatevers, it is at another street, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it will bring such order and even ease of movement in our towns, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, if this can be done, you'll find that towns like Nairobi, where sometimes you find city askaris really mishandling these good people, who are our parents, who are our brothers and sisters, who are working for a livelihood. Because if they don't, then they will have other ways of earning a living. These other ways could be through violent robberies. There could be, thuggery. Could be other ways, Mr. Speaker. If in Nairobi, we expect this sort of legislation to help to bring order into the city, to have streets that are designated that this is a no vending zone, Mr. Speaker, or this is a restricted area, Mr. Speaker, or this is a restriction-free vending zone, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this is very important. It's also important that there is, registration of such persons, Mr. Speaker. So at any one time, we are able to monitor as a country, as a nation, how many people are in the vending business. Not that they will not graduate into other businesses. People do graduate. You graduate from a motorbike to a tuk-tuk, you graduate from a tuk-tuk to a taxi, maybe even to ownership of a matatu. Same case with those who are vending. I know of a young man who after college was vending. He was getting some clothes from Kikomba, taking to Kitengela, selling a little, kidogo kidogo, sorry, Mr. Speaker, selling those items in small quantities. And finally, he got a job. I know today he's one of the media houses. But he started as a vendor. It was a better way of utilizing his time than just staying in the house, not doing anything, just because he's a graduate and, this is not the sort of job for a graduate. So we have very many of our educated young people who are vending. And vending rightfully because it's a better way of utilizing their time and also earning something small for themselves, even earning in order to help their parents a little to contribute for school fees, Mr. Speaker, and even for their upkeep in Nairobi, their upkeep in these towns, Mr. Speaker. A lot of college students are selling items, some boiled eggs, some, sausages in the streets, Mr. Speaker, and such should be helped. They should be assisted to get an atmosphere of even selling that food. The hygiene standards should be maintained. The counties to make sure that, there are sanitary places, washrooms and places for washing hands, and Mr. Speaker, so that we also contribute to the good health of the citizens of our republic, Mr. Speaker. And so this helps a lot, Mr. Speaker, in regulation, in registration, in monitoring. In a county like Kajiado, a place like Namanga, Mr. Speaker, we have our neighbors coming in also to do a bit of vending, but it's always good to know. We have this number of people from the neighboring country coming in to vend, but we are also securing our own vendors, let's say in Namanga, in Busia, at the borders, Mr. Speaker. It's good that the Kenyan government, the Kenyan lawmakers start to take seriously protection of Kenyans doing businesses, and not just big international businesses, but also to the smallest business, that we are taking care of our people, so that the infiltration also from the neighboring countries is not so much so that they come to overrun our own people, Mr. Speaker, even in very small businesses, Mr. Speaker. And so, Mr. Speaker, this is really a relevant piece of legislation. Mr. Speaker, when it comes to foodstuffs, that the level of hygiene will need to be taken to a notch higher. A lot of restrictions need to be put, but not to hinder, the businesses of these people, but to enable them, as we also protect the health of Kenyans, so that in case if food is sold that causes, let's say, is harmful or causes infections or maybe food that was not right, there is a way to trace that vendor who brought food that was not okay for consumption. In case of food poisoning, you are able to monitor and know, oh, this is what happened. There was chicken or fish that was sold that may have taken longer from the source to the market, and this is how it ended up, poisoning the public, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, even, in terms of revenue collection, it is easier when such organization and order is put in place. I know in there are towns like Kitengela where usually it is on Sundays that there are so many vendors. And I realized the majority of these vendors are coming from Nairobi. I meet the same person who tried to sell me socks somewhere here in Nairobi. I meet them in the streets of Kitengela and I'm like, hey, I saw you somewhere. And yeah, you realize there are even inter-county trading You know, there are people coming from Nairobi trading in Kajiado, Mr. Speaker. And as they do that, there must be a way to monitor the movement of these people and also to help them trade, but not to overrun the local market in every county, because, Mr. Speaker, even those who are stationed, people in those counties, need the space and need, you know, the protection by legislation to be able to do their trading, Mr. Speaker. And so, Mr. Speaker, I see this as a very relevant piece of legislation that will bring sanity to the business environment. There are those people who are you know, in the mainstream business, in their shops, and they are paying rent. They are paying a lot of other revenues to the county. There must be a way also to protect them so that the vendors also do not overrun the space until those who are paying rent in their own buildings are not missing out on the business. It's only the counties that can organize the vendors to be in a certain place so that they also allow those who are in the main buildings to also do their businesses, so that none will disadvantage the other, Mr. Speaker. The street vendors must not disadvantage those in the mainstream businesses, but also those in the mainstream businesses must, you know, must give a little space to those who are doing, you know, small-time businesses, part-time business. Mr. Speaker, we have seen even outside this country, even in the first world, Mr. Speaker, we have seen places where you will find people vending wares, you know, items, but at restricted hours, Mr. Speaker. So even the timing of vending should be put in such a way that it gives a free flow of movement of people, respect working hours, respect other businesses that are going on, so that, you know, each complements the other, Mr. Speaker. I think this bill was meant to bring that kind of order, Mr. Speaker. And so, Mr. Speaker, it is very important that after the passage, because I believe this law will go through, it will go through because it makes a lot of sense. After the passage of this bill, then our counties should adopt, follow, ensure that there is you know, that everybody then keeps to their time, everybody keeps to their space, everybody is working within a regulated environment with order and with respect, Mr. Speaker. And the county should also be able to provide the necessary services that are required from them, you know, so that those who are vending have an environment that they can work, you know, comfortably, Mr. Speaker. So that even our young people, I encourage to use, you know, their time before they get other sort of employments, Mr. Speaker, to do something useful for themselves, Mr. Speaker, even just to gain experience on what goes on what their parents do, Mr. Speaker. And so, Mr. Speaker, I support this bill as a very important bill, Mr. Speaker, that our counties will be able to adopt immediately and use to bring order and proper, you know, working environments for everybody. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Perez, thank you for your contribution. Senator Chimera Raphael.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity. Let me first begin by saying, for those Kenyans that were in doubt that Parliament can actually legislate on issues that touch directly on Mwananchi, today is your moment. And for those many Kenyans that thought we couldn't legislate on informal trading, Mr. Speaker, today is equally their moment. And the moment of the hustlers, Mr. Speaker, is well captured through Senator Esther Kenyuri's street vending bill, Mr. Speaker. Let me also, in a very special manner, thank and congratulate Senator Esther Kenyuri for such a wonderful piece of legislation, Mr. Speaker. It is not easy, it is not very common in this House to find a legislator who would put his or her thoughts, energy and mind into coming up with a piece of legislation that basically seeks to speak to the life of the common person in this country. Senator Esther, I thank you for that industry. I thank you for that energy, and I know this House will do whatever it takes to support you and pass this particular bill, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in lawmaking, we seek to make laws for the good of the people, Mr. Speaker. And the good of the people, Mr. Speaker, can be the greatest law that any parliament in this world will aspire to do, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I will briefly speak to a few issues as captured in the bill by Senator Kenyuri, Mr. Speaker, because many of my colleagues have spoken to it, and many more of my colleagues would wish to speak to this bill, Mr. Speaker, and as such, I will be fairly brief in my contribution to this particular bill, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Section 11 of the bill, Mr. Speaker, provides for designation of vending locations, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we have many street vendors who just vend for the sake of vending, Mr. Speaker. They are not organized, they are not properly arranged, Mr. Speaker, and this bill seeks to cure that dignity, Mr. Speaker, by designating areas and by allowing the county governments through the relevant ministry, through the relevant department, Mr. Speaker, to even go to an extra limb of constructing areas where our street vendors can comfortably be able to carry out their business, Mr. Speaker. This bill, Mr. Speaker, is very transformative, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, also let me speak on Section 17, subsection C of that bill, Mr. Speaker, on the issue of prescribed fees, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the bill in itself, Mr. Speaker, gives many of our county governments a chance to collect more revenue, Mr. Speaker. These street vendors, in my own honest opinion, I know even as we are seeking to regulate and license the same, Mr. Speaker, they will be paying what the bill has called prescribed fees, Mr. Speaker. I just want to appeal to those people in county governments, those in charge of the financial affairs of the county, those in charge of coming up with policies and regulations on levying taxes, on levying fees, on levying licensing fees, Mr. Speaker, to be very reasonable enough to these young men and women of this country, who most of them form the bulk of street traders, Mr. Speaker. So that we do not use this particular law, Mr. Speaker, again to trample upon the economic rights, Mr. Speaker. Let me appeal to our county governments, especially our governors. If this bill becomes law and it comes to you for implementation, Mr. Speaker, let us have reasonable fees levied against our street traders, so that that young man who sells groundnuts in Konayamsa, in Diani, in Kwale County, Mr. Speaker, can be able to afford paying the requisite fees so that he gets his license, Mr. Speaker, so that he gets a chance to, in a much more dignified manner, to engage in his business, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Kwale County is a fairly unique county in terms of this bill, Mr. Speaker. We have a whole section which we call the Diani Beach Road, where there are traders, Mr. Speaker, trading in various artifacts, Mr. Speaker, trading in various tourism-related merchants, Mr. Speaker. And I know we have, and not to cast aspersions to my county government, but we've not come up with a much more proper, organized and planned manner within which we will allow our traders, small-scale traders, Mr. Speaker, to do their business without having issues with the relevant county askaris and all that, Mr. Speaker. And also want to appeal to our county enforcement officers, Mr. Speaker. It has been common knowledge that every time street vendors are out there on the streets, they are arrested, they are harassed, Mr. Speaker. Whatever items they were vending, Mr. Speaker, is confiscated, Mr. Speaker, unlawfully, and that is an act that speaks to their daily livelihood, Mr. Speaker. I want to assume, and I am so sure and I believe that this bill, Mr. Speaker, cures that mischief. It allows our county askaris to be much more organized so that you appreciate the kind of work and the kind of role that these street vendors are playing, Mr. Speaker, in making sure the economy grows, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as a government, we went on the campaign agenda promising to uplift the lives of those who are downtrodden, Mr. Speaker. This is one of the surest way of doing it, Mr. Speaker. And I want to really say I fully associate with the Senator Esther Kenyuri for such a wonderful legislation, Mr. Speaker. And it is my plea to my colleague senators that if there's a bill that we should all rally around in this House, Mr. Speaker, then this is a bill, Mr. Speaker. For those many remarks, Mr. Speaker, I beg to support. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Chimera, for your support. I will next allow Senator Beatrice Ogola to give her support, but before you do that, Senator Beatrice, I have communication to make. This is, Honorable Senators, I wish to report to the Senate that pursuant to Standing Order 47.1, I have received the following message from His Excellency the President regarding the referral of the County Allocation of Revenue Bill, Senate Bills number 25 of 2024. The message, which was conveyed as a presidential memorandum dated 10th July 2024, was received in my office today, Thursday, 11th of July 2024. Pursuant to the standing order, I now report the message. Whereas a bill titled An Act of Parliament to Provide for the Equitable Allocation of Revenue raised nationally among the county governments for the 2024-2025 financial year, the responsibilities of national and county governments pursuant to such allocation and for connected purposes was passed by the Senate on 11th June 2024 and then the National Assembly on the 25th of June 2024. Whereas the County Allocations of Revenue Bill 2024 was presented for presidential assent in accordance with Article 115 of the Constitution on the 28th of June 2024, and whereas the presentation of the County Allocation of Revenue Bill for presidential assent was preceded by the referral of the Finance Bill 2024 on the 26th of June 2024 for reconsideration by the National Assembly with a recommendation to delete all clauses of the impunged bill. And whereas the referral of the Finance Bill 2024 was prompted by widespread public dissatisfaction leading to my decision to decline assent to the Finance Bill 2024. And whereas the failure to enact the Finance Bill 2024 has necessitated the reorganization and rationalization of the government's financial arrangements for the financial year 2024-2025, including the County Allocation of Revenue Bill 2024, to accommodate the anticipated revenue reduction that would have been collected had the Finance Bill 2024 come into force. Now, therefore, in exercise of the powers conferred on me by Article 115, Sub-Article 1B of the Constitution, I decline to assent to the County Allocation of Revenue Bill 2024 and refer the bill for reconsideration by the Senate with a recommendation that the bill be amended by deleting the first schedule and replacing it with a schedule that is attached to the memorandum. Honorable Senators, Article 115 provides that the House of Parliament shall either by a majority vote amend the bill in light of the President's reservations or by a vote supported by 2/3 of members of each House, pass the bill a second time without amendment or with amendments that do not fully accommodate the President's reservations. Pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order 170, I now refer the memorandum to the Standing Committee on Finance and Budget for consideration. Due to the urgent need to enact the law to unlock funds for operation of county governments, I direct that the committee tables its report on or before Thursday, the 18th of July 2024. The Senate shall thereafter vote to approve or reject the President's recommendation on the bill or pass amendments that do not fully accommodate the President's recommendation. I thank you, honorable members. Signed, Speaker of the Senate. Now, Senator Beatrice Akinyi.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me the opportunity to add my voice to the street vendors bill as presented by my Senator sister, Senator Esther Okinyuri. Honorable Speaker, this is a very timely bill. Street vendoring is a source of livelihood for a majority of our people all over the country. And just as street vendors are a majority of the businesses, the small businesses we have in our locality, the same way we have border borders operating in our localities, Honorable Speaker, these are a class of people that we must take note of, and as a country, we need to get them organized. Honorable Speaker, just last week, when I made my contribution to the State of the Nation, a motion that was finalized this afternoon, I indicated that a number of us were very lucky earlier in life that when we were through with our colleges or university education and in our different professions, all of us got direct employment at that point of time, which is not a privilege of the many Kenyans that are here today. And that is the major reason why we've had even the demonstrations that we've had in the last few weeks, because unemployment has been a major issue in this country. And that is why, Honorable Speaker, I rise to support this bill because it is a source of livelihood. And from the onset, Honorable Speaker, most of the Kenyans that are involved in vendoring on the streets, a number of them ideally are university graduates or secondary school leavers who are trying to make life out of the small businesses that they engage in. Honorable Speaker, from the street vendors, we are able to get all the products you might need in our homes or in our lives. If you miss any product you need in shops or in established malls, you can be sure when you send for those products from the streets, you are able to get them. So I support this because this bill is setting priorities for the street vendors. It is also giving some order in a way in which these businesses are going to take place. Honorable Speaker, street vendors, the many businesses they get involved in are really a source of national unity. All of you will agree with me that those traders come from all over this country. In my small town back at home called Ndewa, on Thursday when we have a market day, you can be sure you have most of the tribes represented in that market. We have traders coming as far as Thika, traders coming as far as Garissa, traders coming as far as Kisii, which are our neighbors. And for me, Honorable Speaker, that is a good show as a country that it is a source of national unity. But the misfortune those traders have, Honorable Speaker, is that a number of them sell their wares on the roads, on the paths. And Honorable Speaker, using the same example of my market, which is they were on a Thursday, often when you look at how the traders are going about their business, one is left with a lot of fear of accidents of even occurring because there are no designated places for these for these traders. All they do is bring their wares very early in the morning. If you visit my town by 4 a.m., when the buses from Nairobi come, when they arrive, all these traders come with their wares. All the lorries come as early as 4 or 6 a.m., and all they have are just portions of the road that they use to as sites for selling their wares. So, Honorable Speaker, the main reason why I really want to support this is the fact that this bill talks about designation of vending zones. And Honorable Speaker, this is important because apart from the street vendors, there are also other users. There are also other usage of some of this space. You find when you walk even in Nairobi here as a city, you find the vendors all over in front of the shops. And this is really not fair to the shopkeepers because they are also into the same business. So when finally this bill comes into force and there are designation zones for these vendors, it will bring order, Honorable Speaker, and other than order, it will also bring the idea of fairness to all other users because their places will be marked, so they will also be maximizing their days. Because when the zones are not marked, Honorable Speaker, the vendors, the street vendors can only be come at some particular times, particular periods of time. You find in the morning they are not there, then in the evening or in the late afternoon they come. It means they are not maximizing the whole day for their businesses. Honorable Speaker, I also support this because the bill talks about data, that the governments, the county governments, will be having real data of these street vendors. And Honorable Speaker, data is important for planning, that once the governments are able to identify who, in terms of their specific names, in terms of their specific numbers, in terms of their specific businesses that they do, then the government is able to plan for them. And Honorable Speaker, planning is key to the success of this kind of business, because then the vendors are able to be given, to be planned for in terms of utilities that they need. Honorable Speaker, the vendors need access, because when they bring their wares, they need their customers to walk to them. They need access to different facilities. So with their data, the government is able to plan for them. The government is able to plan for sanitation of even the vendors. The government is able to plan for other public utilities like street lights that they need, because, Honorable Speaker, we are here talking about many hours of doing business even beyond sunset. And so they must have certain facilities, utilities like street lights. There is need for planning of security of the vendors, and Honorable Speaker, this can only be achieved by the government having data for all these street vendors. And Honorable Speaker, it is important that in the process of this designation, in the process of getting the data, the vendors must be engaged in setting these zones. Honorable Speaker, it is not right in planning that the government just arbitrarily decides that we are going to have vendors in these zones without engaging the vendors. If we reflect back as a country, Honorable Speaker, there was a time some years back when certain markets were constructed in this country under the economic stimulus program. Honorable Speaker, if you walk around or if you go around this country, you'll find that resources were put in building certain markets. I can give an example, a market in my home constituency called Dewa that was constructed using the economic stimulus funds. A market in Mbeta, that is Super North constituency, and in so many others, and you find the markets lying unused. Honorable Speaker, why did we get into such a situation? I think, or I know that we got into such kind of a situation because we did not plan together with the vendors. So I want to say that in making the designations, in designing these zones, in taking this data, in setting aside of these areas, of these sites, the government must engage the vendors so that that is done in terms of as an aspect of public participation. Honorable Speaker, I want to give another example. I happen to have served in the county government of Homa Bay as a CEC for lands and urban development at a time that the Homa Bay town bus stage that was constructed by the Ministry of Lands and Urban Development was being completed. And as we are coming in as the county government, I had a noble duty of overseeing the completion of the bus stop, and other than the completion, I had the noble duty of the distribution of the stalls and the facilities that were provided within the bus park. And that is why I'm saying that in designating the zones, this must be done one-on-one with the vendors so that that is done rightly and that is done with the right people. When I did, what I did at that time, Honorable Speaker, is that I engaged. I lobbied the stakeholders in the bus stop that had given way for the construction. And that included stall owners, that included restaurant owners. I even involved in my committee the bus and matatu owners. And Honorable Speaker, this brought very good results because everybody was brought in. The planning of the reallocation of the stalls, the restaurants, and all the facility points, including the washrooms that were there, were collectively done with my office as the CEC in charge of urban development, together with the stakeholders then. That ensured that the transition was peaceful, and that ensured that we were dealing with the right people. And that is why I say, when the government finally wants to do the designation, it must be done together with the street vendors so that they are part and parcel of the decision making. Honorable Speaker, I also want to support this bill because this bill spells out the rights to these street vendors. And some of the rights have been echoed earlier in my speech, that the street vendors have a right to do business. The street vendors, in doing business, Honorable Speaker, they have a right to certain facilities that must be provided. And I'm happy this is provided by the bill by Senator Esther Okunyuri. When we talk about street vendors, we are talking about business. And Honorable Speaker, we are talking about businesses that are done in our urban centers, right from the markets we have in our counties, right from the towns, right from the municipalities, and in the cities. And so, Honorable Speaker, this must go on hand in hand with the planning of utilities, as I've said, utilities that include lighting, utilities that include parking, utilities that include sanitation, and aspects of security, because those are very important, outstanding components of urbanization that facilitates businesses taking place. Honorable Speaker, this bill also talks about protection from harassment. As my other colleagues have stated, Honorable Speaker, most of the street vendors are often harassed And the harassment comes from the law enforcement officers of our county governments. So I'm happy that this bill spells out. Honorable Speaker, the reason why the street vendors must be protected is basically because they have a right to do business. They are Kenyans doing business. This is a source of their livelihood. And Honorable Speaker, why should they be harassed? There is also a need that this bill must also emphasize on the training of law enforcers, the county enforcement units, because this goes hand in hand with the operation of street vendors. Street vendors do business within county government structures, and the officers that deal with them on a daily business, daily to daily business are the law enforcement officers, which is an arm of the county government. So this bill must mention also on the preparedness, on the training of these law enforcement officers, so that they are able to work hand in hand with the street vendors. Honorable Speaker, the reason why we cannot allow the street vendors to be harassed is because the street vendors take a majority of our businesses down at our urban centers. Honorable Speaker, I also want to add that there must be an aspect of the promotion of e-commerce in this bill, because the street vendors, there's so much they can gain from doing business on those platforms of e-commerce. Honorable Speaker, we have children, we have our children who equally finish universities, and before they get any employment, as all young people think that once you are through with university, you look forward to getting employment elsewhere. A number of these young people engage in businesses. And so e-commerce is so critical in this bill. I would like the mover of the bill to consider incorporating that it is the responsibility also of the government, both the two levels of government, both the county governments and national government, that with this bill, they can encourage e-commerce amongst the street vendors, something that I know that they're already doing. Honorable Speaker, I support this bill. I support the fact that there should be designation. I support the fact that the street vendors need some organization by the governments. I support the fact that this will bring order in doing business. I support the fact that street vendors must be a priority for both the county and national government. I support the fact that the street vendors bill should be supported by all of us, and we must, as a house, support this bill and ensure that it is passed and it should be implemented. Honorable Speaker, other than the street vendors, I've mentioned borders as another category of business people that must be supported. And Honorable Speaker, we cannot ignore these two groups of business enterprise because of the numbers that they are taking. In some of the villages out here, and mine included, borders are a big component of source of livelihood. All our young people that have finished school, we support them because rather than sit at home, at least they have got something that they are doing. We should, as a nation, stop looking at businesses like border or street vendors as businesses of the low class. They are the actual businesses that are available today, and so as government, we must support them, we must put order in them, we must prioritize, and we must give the necessary facilities to ensure that such businesses thrive. Honorable Speaker, I support.
Thank you, Senator Beatrice. Now I will invite Senator Nderitu John Kinywa to also give his contribution.
Asanti Bwana Spika kunipa fursa hii niweze kuchangia mswada huu wa wachuuzi rejareja. Na kwanza kabisa nimpongeze Senator Esther Wakanyuri kwa mswada huu. Kwanza kabisa Bwana Spika ameweza kuwapa heshima na hadhi hawa wachuuzi ambao kwa wakati mwingi wanaonekana ni kama watu hawafai. Zile biashara wanazofanya ni biashara ambazo ni hazina manufaa. Lakini kwa yeye kuleta mswada huu Bwana Spika, yeye ameonyesha ya kwamba anawajali, na ni kweli Bwana Spika. Kwa yeye kusema ya kwamba ukiangalia kipengee cha tatu, kipengee cha tatu kuelekea mpaka kipengee cha 4. Anasema ya kwamba serikali kuu, waziri anayehusika anapaswa kuwa anajua idadi ya wale wachuuzi walio katika Jamhuri ya Kenya Bwana Spika. Hiyo inamaanisha ya kwamba baada ya yeye kujua idadi ataweza kuleta usawa sehemu ambazo zinafanyiwa kazi. Iwe ni sehemu ya Nyahururu, iwe ni sehemu ya Nanyuki, iwe ni sehemu ya Nyaribari Chache, wale wachuuzi wote wanapaswa wafanyie sehemu ambazo ni sawa Bwana Spika. Kwa sababu Bwana Spika, mara si moja tumepata hawa wachuuzi wetu wanaishi kwa maisha ya kukimbizwa, kila mahali wanakimbizwa. Ukienda Nyahururu Bwana Spika, unapata wale wachuuzi na wanalipa kodi Bwana Spika. Unapata mchana kutwa ni kufukuzwa kutoka sehemu moja mpaka nyingine. Vile seneta alivyosema ya kwamba watatengewa sehemu yao. Hii ni nzuri zaidi, wakitengewa sehemu mahali wataweza kufanyia biashara yao. Na sehemu ile ambao wanafanyia biashara Bwana Spika, kuweze kuwa na huduma zile ambazo zinahitajika Bwana Spika. Pale pawe na choo Bwana Spika. Kwa sababu ni watu wanaweza kufanya biashara yao kwa masaa mengi mpaka usiku. Na vile Kenya tumesema ya kwamba tunataka kuwa na uchumi ambao utakuwa ukitendeka masaa 24 Bwana Spika. Hii itawezekana ikiwa wachuuzi kama hawa wataweza kushughulikiwa, na sehemu kama hizo kunaweza kuwekwa mataa. Kwa lugha ya mtaani Bwana Spika nasikia wakisema mulika mwizi, lakini kwangu mimi sitaki kusema hivyo kwa sababu haya yatakuwa maendeleo. Tutakuwa tukisema tuwe na yale mataa ya kumulika maendeleo Bwana Spika. Bwana Spika, si hayo tu. Ukiangalia Bwana Spika, sehemu nyingi unazotembelea, kwa sababu unapata hawa wafanyabiashara, hawa wachuuzi hawakuchukuliwa maanani na gatuzi zetu. Ukienda mahali kunaitwa Naibor Bwana Spika, unapata tayari kumetengenezwa vibanda ambavyo vingetumika na hawa wachuuzi, lakini vibanda havina mtu yoyote. Kama vile Senator Akinya alivyosema, unapata vibanda vimetengenezwa lakini hakuna mtu yoyote kwa sababu hawakuhusishwa. Ukitoka hapo uende mahali kunaitwa Sosian, unapata vivyo hivyo Bwana Spika. Pesa zimetumiwa, zile ambazo tumepigania hapa katika seneti ziende katika kaunti zetu Bwana Spika, ama gatuzi zetu, lakini unapata zinatumika, lakini kwa sababu wafanyabiashara wale hawakuhusishwa, wanasema mahali kibanda kimejengwa ni mbali na mahali ambapo wataweza kupata wateja. Bwana Spika, tukiwa vile Kanyuri anavyopendekeza kuwe na zile sehemu, itajulikana ya kwamba kila mtu ambaye anafanya ile biashara wataenda pale. Kwa hivyo hakutakuwa na ule ushindani mkali kusema ya kwamba yule yako karibu na mjini na huyu ameondolewa kidogo, lakini hiyo sehemu ikiwekwa, na kwa sababu tayari ameonyesha ya kwamba ni mpaka ukuwe na barua ikiwa unafanyia biashara mahali ambapo na wewe ni mchuuzi rejareja na unafanyia biashara mahali ambapo habajatengwa. Kwa hivyo hii inamaanisha kwamba wote wataenda mahali pamoja. Kwa hivyo nampongeza Bwana Spika. Ukitembea mfano Bwana Spika, ukitembea mahali kunaitwa Sipili siku ya Jumamosi, unapata ndio siku inatengwa wachuuzi wanaenda kufanya kazi Bwana Spika, lakini mahali wanaenda kufanyia kazi hapana choo. Kwa hivyo unapata hata japokuwa wanafanya ile kazi yao, huduma zile zingine ambazo zinahitajika haziyuko pale. Si pale peke yake, uende pale panaitwa Gatundia siku ya Jumapili, wanafanya ile soko yao Jumapili, lakini shida ni ile ile. Uende mahali kunaitwa Muthengera siku ya Ijumaa, vile vile shida ni ile. Uende siku ya Alhamisi Rumuruti, wakati kuna ng'ombe wanauzwa, Bwana Spika, mahali ambapo wanauzia, mahali pametengwa, hakuna choo, hakuna huduma yoyote, Bwana Spika. Kwa hivyo mswada huu ni mswada ambao utatoa mwongozo vile ambavyo sehemu ikitengwa ni nini na nini inapaswa kuwekwa pale, ndio wafanyikazi wetu waweze kunufaika. Bwana Spika, hii tena inasaidia ule ushindani usio ulioko. Unapata mtu anakuja kuuza pale nje, na yule ambaye amekomboa nyumba anauza bidhaa zile zile zinauzwa na mtu anauza pale nje. Si sawa, Bwana Spika, kwa sababu pale panakuwa na ushindani ambao si mzuri. Kwa hivyo pakiwa sehemu hizi zimetengwa, itasaidia ndio kila mtu aweze kupata riziki yake, Bwana Spika. Bwana Spika, na imesemwa na ningependa kurudia, hizi kazi za wauzaji rejareja zinafanywa na vijana na watu ambao pengine hawana hela zaidi. Nikizingatia zinafanywa na vijana, Bwana Spika, na wakati mwingi unasikia hata kama ni kazi yoyote unaenda kutafuta, unasikia ukiambiwa wewe una ujuzi, una uzoefu. Bwana Spika, hii kazi ya rejareja pakiwa pale pametengwa na mtu anzie hata kama ni shilingi yake 2,000, 3,000, Bwana Spika, atakuwa na uzoefu wakati anafungua, hata kama ni duka kubwa ama biashara nyingine kubwa, atakuwa na ule uzoefu, Bwana Spika, na atakuwa tayari ameweza kujua jinsi, ama atajua ni biashara gani nitakaweza kufanya ambayo itaweza kunipa manufaa. Bwana Spika, kitu kingine ambacho kitasaidiwa na mswada huu, Bwana Spika, kodi ama ushuru unaopatikana kutoka kwa kaunti zetu, sina shaka zitaweza kuongezeka, Bwana Spika, kwa sababu sehemu hizi zikitengwa tutakuweza kupata ushuru, kwa sababu sasa hakutakuwa ule kukimbizwa, Bwana Spika, hawa wafanyikazi wa gatuzi zetu kuwafuruga hawa wafanyabiashara na kuona kama si watu, Bwana Spika, kwa sababu tayari kumewekwa, naona kumesemekana wakubaliane ni pesa ngapi watakuwa wakitoa, na kwa sababu watakuwa wakifanya hiyo kazi pale panafaa na kisheria, kwa hivyo hakutakuwa na kazi ya kuwakimbiza, Bwana Spika. Bwana Spika, nikiangazia ya kwamba mswada huu umeletwa na Esther Kanyuri, nataka kumpongeza kwa sababu Esther Kanyuri, unakumbuka tulipokuwa tukifanya uchaguzi, sisi kama chama cha UDA ambapo Kanyuri najua ni mwanachama, tulisema sisi tunataka kuzingatia wale walio chini, mama mboga, watu wa bodaboda, wale ambao ni watu wale wa kiwango cha chini, Bwana Spika, hata vinyozi, Bwana Spika. Mswada huu umelenga ndipo unawashughulikia vilivyo. Kwa hivyo mimi nina kila sababu ya kuunga mkono mswada huu, Bwana Spika, kwa sababu ukitembelea sehemu nyingi za Laikipia, Bwana Spika, shida wachuuzi wetu wanaopata, Bwana Spika, ukienda Nyahururu, shida kubwa wanaopata hawa wachuuzi wetu rejareja ni vile hawana sehemu za kuuzia. Bwana Spika, nimekuwa nikiongea na gavana Mwambia, pengine tuwe tukifunga barabara, pengine siku ya Jumamosi na siku ya Jumapili tunafunga barabara, wachuuzi wetu wanakuja kuuza. Lakini Esther Kanyuri ameng'amua na akajua ya kwamba sasa tukileta mswada huu, Bwana Spika, tutakuwa na zile sehemu ambazo zimetengwa, na zikitengwa, Bwana Spika, kwa hivyo itakuwa ni rahisi sana sasa hawa wachuuzi wetu waweze kufanya biashara zao, kufanya kazi yao, Bwana Spika, bila ya kusumbuliwa na mtu yoyote, Bwana Spika. Mahali nilikuwa na mukshi kidogo, na pengine wakati atakapokuwa akirudisha kwa Kiingereza nasema reply, akirudisha pengine nilikuwa nikijiuliza kwa nini anahusisha sana waziri wa serikali kuu, ilhali Mambo ya biashara kama hizi za gatuzi ziko katika gatuzi zetu. Anapaswa kupatia waziri wa gatuzi yeye mwenyewe, kwa sababu nchi yetu ni tofauti na mambo yanaendelezwa tofauti, na kwa sababu serikali iliyoko ni tofauti, kama ni Laikipia ni tofauti na Kisumu, ni tofauti na mahali pengine. Kwa nini unamhusisha waziri wa serikali kuu? Kwa sababu Senator Esther, mimi naona pengine ukileta mswada namna hii alafu uhusishe waziri wa serikali kuu, utapata ya kwamba isije ikakuwa ni kama vile ambavyo afya tayari imeletwa katika gatuzi zetu, lakini unapata hela nyingi zinabaki katika serikali kuu. Ningetaka tu aweze kusahihisha hiyo sehemu, ndio tusije tukaleta mswada hapa, alafu baada ya kuleta mswada hapa unapata mambo mengi yanafanywa katika serikali kuu badala ya kupelekwa katika gatuzi, ilhali mambo ya biashara na hasa biashara kama hii tayari imepelekwa katika gatuzi zetu na inapaswa kushughulikiwa hapo katika gatuzi zetu kwa hali ambayo inafaa. Mimi niko tayari na naunga mkono ndiposa watu wetu waweze kusaidika na mambo haya. Ukiangalia katika kipengee cha 15 kinasema ya kwamba vile ambavyo hawa wachuuzi watakavyokuwa wakipewa leseni na kuandikishwa. Bwana Spika, hii ni nzuri, ndiposa wakati mipango yote inafanywa kuwe kunajulikana ya kwamba hapa kuna wachuuzi wangapi, kama ni mifereji ya maji inatakikana mingapi, ni biashara gani inayofanywa, Bwana Spika, kwa sababu unapata kuna biashara ingelitaka maji zaidi kushinda biashara ile nyingine. Kwa hivyo nashukuru na ni vizuri hii sehemu imeletwa na inaonyesha ya kwamba mswada huu umezingatia kila kitu. Kwa hivyo hakuna mahali kuna upepetevu, na haya yote yakizingatiwa, Bwana Spika, mswada huu utaleta afueni, utasaidia watu wetu, na itakuwa ni mojawapo ya nguzo ambazo za chama chetu, mambo tuliyosema Esther Kanyuri amegonga ndipo. Lakini nataka kumpongeza Senator Akinyi, yeye najua alikuwa waziri katika county, kwa hivyo yeye ana uzoefu mwingi, ana ujuzi mwingi, na nimemsikiza yale mambo aliyosema, na yote tukiyazingatia, na pengine mambo Akinyi aliongeza, ukiyazingatia tutapata mswada ulio bora zaidi. Na kwa sababu yeye amekuwa mama na vile vile waziri, na Mswahili anasema kizaliwacho ni kuzuri kushinda kinachokizaa. Mswada huu utakuwa mzuri kushinda pengine kama vile ambavyo ametaja na kufikiria. Asanti Bwana Spika, na nashukuru.
Thank you very much, Senator Kinyua, for your contribution. Now, honorable senators, we do not have any other member interested in contributing to this bill, and I'll call upon the mover, Senator Esi, to reply. Considering that you're the last person to speak to the bill, Senator Esi, in terms of timelines, you have got 12 minutes to summarize on your reply to the bill.
Asante sana Bwana Spika kwa kunipa nafasi hii tena, na ningependa kurudisha mswada huu. Kwanza ningelipenda kufuata mkondo wa seneta wa Laikipia, Seneta John Kinyua, ikikumbukwa kuwa mapema wiki hii tumekuwa tukifurahia siku ya Kiswahili, na kwa sababu na kienzi Kiswahili, ningependa kufanya kipindi hiki kwa lugha hiyo. Bwana Spika, ngoja kwanza nipongeze maseneta ambao wamezungumzia mswada huu, nikianza na mwenyekiti wa kamati ya biashara, Seneta wa Kajiado, Seneta Seki. Nimesikia mchango wako na nitaweza kuongezea ambayo umeyasema. Seneta dadangu Thabita Mutinda pia ambaye alitoa hoja zake pia, asante sana. Seneta wa Tana River, Seneta Mlamamba, Seneta Mungatana, asante pia kwa kutoa kwanza kama kisa ambacho umetoa ukiwa kwenye shule ya upili. Nimesikia mawazo yako ya kunipa motisha katika mswada huu. Pia ningeweza kumpongeza Seneta Dan Maanzo wa Makueni ambaye pia amechangia kwa mswada huu na kusema kuwa mswada huu utawapa vijana kazi na wale ambao hawana kazi kwenye jamii. Seneta dadangu mkubwa Peris Tobiko ambaye anatokea sehemu ya Kajiado pia ameweza kuchangia mswada huu na mpa shukrani zangu za dhati. Seneta Rafael Chimera ambaye anatoka eneo la Kwale, na ningependa kusema kuwa seneta huyu anawakilisha vijana katika mrengo wa serikali kwenye bunge hili. Na pia napenda kumpongeza dadangu mkubwa Seneta Beatrice Ogola ambaye pia amechangia mada hii kwa moyo wake wa dhati kabisa, Bwana Spika. Na nikimalizia, ninajua maseneta wengi wangependa kuzungumzia mswada huu, lakini kwa sababu ya muda, hawa ambao wamezungumza wamekwisha toa mawazo bora. Na nisimsahau seneta wa Laikipia, Seneta John Kinyua, ambaye pia amegusia mambo ya kwa nini waziri ametajika kwenye mswada huu mno. Na ndio kwa sababu mswada huu umekuja kwenye bunge ili tujadiliane na kuweza kufanya uwe bora, Bwana Spika. Hivyo Seneta Kinyua, nimesikia hoja zako katika kuchangia mswada huu, na ninatoa ahadi kuwa haya yote tutayasikiliza ili tuweze kutunga sheria ambazo zinawanufaisha wananchi ambao tunawaongoza, Bwana Spika. Na nikiwa kwenye harakati za kumalizia Bwana Spika, ningependa kusema kuwa mambo ya uchuuzi hayafanyiki Kenya tu, na si mataifa yanayoendelea peke yake, hata yale mataifa ya ugaibuni. Ukienda kama Marekani tuna wachuuzi, ukienda Uingereza tuna wachuuzi, ukienda Afrika Kusini tuna wachuuzi, ukienda kwa wenzetu hapa Afrika Mashariki, Tanzania, Uganda, tuna wachuuzi katika sehemu hizo zote. Na itambulike kuwa wachuuzi hawajisaidii wao wenyewe. Wakati wanafanya biashara hizi zao ndogo ndogo, wanajisaidia na kusaidia familia zao ambazo wamekuwa nazo. Bwana Spika, pia niseme kuwa mswada huu utachangia mno katika magatuzi yetu 47, tukianzia hapa Nairobi ambapo bunge la kitaifa lipo. Mswada huu utaleta mambo mengi ikiwemo kuchangia kukuza uchumi wa sehemu hii na kuleta mpangilio kwenye miji hii mikubwa kama mji wa Nairobi, mji wa Mombasa, mji wa Kisumu na pia vijiji vidogo pia, Mheshimiwa Spika. Nikiongezea pia, hoja hii na mswada huu umekuja katika wakati unaofaa. Serikali ya Kenya Kwanza ikiwa kwenye harakati zao za kampeni kipindi ambacho kimemalizika, tulikuwa tukisema kuwa tunajali maisha ya wale wachochole, wale ambao wako katika vitengo vya chini mno. Na mswada huu umegusia kitengo hicho. Ninafurahia sana kuwa mswada huo umeletwa na mimi. Mheshimiwa Spika, mimi ni mfano bora wa mtu ambaye amekuwa kutoka vile vitengo vya chini na sasa niko kwenye bunge hili la kitaifa nikizidi kuwatetea wengine ambao si si miaka yangu tu, Mheshimiwa Spika. na ni ombi langu kuwa maseneta wengine wataweza kuniunga mkono na marekebisho yoyote ambayo tutaweza kuyafanya ili sheria hii iweze kuwa sheria ambayo itasukuma taifa la Kenya mbele na kutusaidia pia kutengeneza pesa hapa na pale ya kusaidia miundo misingi na pia kusaidia wananchi wa kawaida ambao wanafanya kazi hizi, Mheshimiwa Spika. Na vile vile mswada huu ulikuwa unagusia mambo ya wale tumewaita wale askari kwenye county kwa lugha ya mtaa wanawaita kanjo. Mswada huu pia unaangazia wachuuzi hao wadogo wasiweze kudhulumiwa na watu kama hao, na ikiwa wataweza kudhulumiwa kuna njia ambazo mambo haya yataweza kuangaliwa, Mheshimiwa Spika. Kwa hivyo kwa sababu ya muda sitaweza kuyataja haya yote, lakini ninafurahishwa sana na mchango wa wale maseneta ambao waliweza kugusia hoja hii, na kwa mchango pia wa wale ambao tumekuwa tukishirikiana nao sana sana kwenye kamati ya biashara, Mheshimiwa Spika. Na sasa nikimalizia, ningeweza kuomba kuwa kulingana na kanuni ya 66 kipengele cha 3, uamuzi wa hoja uahirishwe hadi siku nyingine utakayoamua. Asante sana Mheshimiwa Spika.
Thank you very much, Senator Esi. Putting of the question will now be deferred pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order 66 as requested by you. Clerk, next order. Honorable Senators, members, it is now 6:27 p.m. and the entire business of the House today have been concluded, and there being no other business, may we rise? There being no other business, the House stands adjourned now at 6:25 p.m. and until Tuesday, the 16th of July, 2024 at 2:30 p.m.